When I went to college, I remember my first year at Antioch College, I was the only black girl in my class. And the first April on campus, I came back from lunch one day and all these bodies were all over the grass. And I was in a state of culture shock. I probably stood there like this. What are they doing? They were what? Tanning. They were trying to tan. Later on they would say, Francis, now I'm your color.
Well, it's June, and the sun is finally shining in most of the country. It's time to get out and enjoy it, and put on that hat and slather on the high SPF, right? Well, maybe not if you're a Gen Z. Is it Gen Z, Gen Z? I don't know. Everyone says, we'll say it will be Canadian, Gen Z. Some people are in their teens and 20s are seeking out the sun, chasing the high UV index to maximize their exposure, comparing tan lines with their friends. And a survey commissioned by the Canadian Dermatology Association indicates Gen Z is tanning despite knowing the cancer risk. Current producer Ann Penman spoke to some teenagers at Kitsilano Beach in Vancouver midday yesterday, where it was sunny in the low 20s.
I'm just looking to be more bronze, like a shade darker, not too much though. And I just use tanning oil. I don't really use sunscreen, which is bad. Like getting a tan just makes me feel like I look better.
The tan I'm hoping to get this summer is probably an all-around kind of brownish tan. I think it definitely ups my confidence because you're more confident when you think you look good.
I'm 17 and I'm hoping to maybe go olive today. Some SPF sunscreen. I don't have 60, but 50 is good enough.
Yeah, like I feel like when I'm pale, like I just look kind of like depressed. And like, yeah, like the whole tan is like summer vibes and everything. So like when I'm darker, I just feel better.
It feels more confident, I guess, and it makes me like have more colors since I'm like more pale.
So are you worried about the risks?
Yeah, low key, but gotta do what you gotta do, I guess, to look good.
I don't really burn that easily because I'm from Asia, so I'm not that worried, but I still want to put on sunscreen because my grandparents had melanoma from working before, so I'm a bit more aware of being under the sun.
What do you say to people who are warning you all the time about don't tan, don't go out in the sun, all that?
Like, it's great that they're warning me, but at the same time, it's like my life, and I feel like I can just do what I want to do.
Like, I tell my mom, like, thank you for your concern, but it is my body, so I get to do what I want. And my sister also gets a tan, so I mean, like, she's like not that much older than me, so I get to do what I want.
Yeah, my grandma has like skin cancer, so she always like warns me about that type of stuff. She's like, she always has like an umbrella when it's sunny out. Yeah, like that'll be me maybe when I'm older, but for right now, like I'm okay.
Dr. Ivan Litmanoff is a dermatologist and an associate professor at McGill University in Montreal. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Great having you here. What do you make of what you just heard? I mean, it was pretty clear, the message that being tanned makes people feel better.
Yeah, our research team hears it all the time. I also hear it all the time from our patients. And clearly, these interviews were not recorded in Australia, where people take sun exposure and skin cancer risk much more seriously. This is a specifically Canadian experience. You're absolutely right.
So how do we get Canadians to take this more seriously about the dangers of sun exposure?
Yeah, unfortunately, as you're showing, the message is not getting through. Melanoma Canada has just documented 17% increase in melanoma rate going from 2023 to 2024 in 1 year alone, which is quite an astounding increase. So as you can see, the Canadian Dermatology Association, under the leadership of Jacinthe Desanel, Mark Kirchhoff, Marisa Piashko, produced this report. We are doing research producing the report. We're trying to investigate ways how Australia has succeeded in delivering the message to young adolescents. I think we can talk about skin cancer, but clearly what you're showing in your interviews is our young Canadians are more worried about appearance. So we should emphasize how unhealthy tan is, how people will look 10, 15 years older if they continue to expose themselves to the sun. If we talk about wrinkles, blotches, I think we will get more traction with that population.
You mentioned Australia. What is Australia doing differently?
Yeah, so Australia has invested heavily in skin cancer prevention and sun protection campaigns. It's a multimodal campaign. They have backed it up with legislation. They have removed taxes from sunscreens. They have banned tanning beds equipment. The messages are everywhere about skin cancer and sun protection in a similar way how we have endorsed anti-tobacco campaign, right? But if you look at Canada, we have taxes on sunscreens. We have bronzage salons everywhere. We don't have any meaningful campaign or engagement nationally or provincially with the population on sun protection.
Yeah, there is that message out there. It's like there's no safe cigarettes and there's no safe tanning. But at the same time, kids are being encouraged, get outside. Don't sit behind your computer screen all day. Go outside and enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the fresh air. So maybe there's a bit of a mixed message for kids who are hearing this.
This is my message as well. I want everybody in Canada to go outdoors. We should enjoy the outdoors. We should be active. We just should do so without getting a tan or a skin burn, right? So we want to celebrate natural skin color. We don't want to be tanner or paler than what we are. And in fact, this is what they do in Australia. They are very outdoorsy people. People are very active. It's just they sun protect. They use sun protective clothing. They use sunscreen on sun exposed, skin. And they're always outdoors. And that's what I want people to do as well.
The Canadian Dermatology Association recently put out a social media campaign to try to reach these younger Canadians. And it shows young actors sticking their hands in toasters, ironing their arms and pressing their face into a waffle iron. The tagline is, "Indoor tanning isn't pretty." It also reads, "A tan looks good now, but the damage lasts." What do you make of that approach?
I think it's brilliant. I salute the leadership of our organization. I think there is a great shock value in that campaign. Correlating the behavior of sun exposure to some of the other behaviors that I think everybody would consider as being unreasonable. In fact, we do know that a single blistering burn will nearly double someone's risk of melanoma later in life. People who, especially women who start using indoor tanning before the age of 20, increase on top of that their melanoma risk by about 50%. So, really to a dermatologist, it would be equivalent. You are just damaging your skin. And if you're doing indoor tanning, you are uniformly exposing more skin than, let's say, if you were in the sun wearing some protective clothing. So we've documented that the mutations are going to be more prevalent on a larger body surface area. So we got to, with a smoking campaign, engage our population from different angles. Some will be shock value, sort of fearful messages. Other ones will be educational messages. And the other ones perhaps could be fun, engaging type of messages, just like we've done with the smoke cessation campaign.
You mentioned shock value. I read this quote from an American dermatologist, and you were talking about tanning beds. And she said, tanning beds are in the same cancer-causing category as asbestos and plutonium. And I heard that one. I said, okay, you got my attention now. But does there need to be, a level of shock value, especially for younger people who seem to be sloughing this off?
I think so. I mean, clearly you are, you just played interviews, and this is what we see every day. So there's few things. Kids believe they're invincible, just like they're saying.
Exactly.
It's not going to happen to me. And they don't realize that it's actually sun exposure in your 20s that's going to earn you all the cancers in the 60s. Right now, we're estimating that 1 in 5 Canadians are going to get skin cancer. And most people who do get a cancer is going to get more than one. So this is really dangerous. Skin cancer, there's about 3-some million new cases of skin cancer diagnosed in the United States alone. Skin cancer is more common than all other human malignancies combined, right? People don't realize that. So why do people tan? Well, first of all, sun is addictive. And this is what we're hearing from those teenagers. It feels good. After a long Canadian winter, it feels good when you get out in the sun.
Exactly.
When it hits your skin, it damages your DNA. At the same time, sun triggers release of endorphins. So, and we all can relate to that. So it's an important evolutionary programming in us to get us out of the cave, so that we can make vitamin D and not die of rickets. Otherwise, of course, it would be safer in a cave from the predator. So that's number one. And the number two for adolescents and teenagers, it's documented that sun regulates mating behavior in mammals, in animals, and it regulates romantic passion in humans. So just think about with the sun, spring, dogs in heat, right? So that's when the mating behavior happens. The same thing for us. So the research actually shows that it's much more important for a female to be tanned, and not so much for the male, but for the female to be tanned in order for the relationship to occur, for the female to be more receptive. Maybe this is why when we look at the magazines, subconsciously magazines always prefer to show those tanned models. So there are some very strong evolutionary drivers why people want to tan. But I keep saying, we're talking about, well, how can I do it safely? How can I, what if I put a sunscreen and then I get this tan or a burn? Well, it's just like looking for a safe cigarette. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist. And you're right. We can compare sun exposure to tobacco and asbestos exposure. There's no safe exposure.
I love this show because I learn something every time, and now I'm learning so much speaking with you about this and these evolutionary traits that are involved in this. But just a last word to you. Do you have a little hope here when you've heard those voices, the people? Do you think the message is getting through?
Right. I do have hope because right now people are worried about their beauty, and we can incorporate sun protection into skincare routine. And also the research shows that we really should focus on the vulnerable age of our adolescents, really from about 14 to 18. We're documenting that this is the age where sun protection practices drop, right, when they come out of the parental control. They're invincible. They're hunting those tanning lines. And then unfortunately at 18, 19, the tanning bed exposure picks up. So I'm hopeful that now that we know what to do, we can intervene in the appropriate age, change some of those trends behavior, focus on aging gracefully. And like I said, I do want people to get out. Please, everybody, get out, enjoy, but do so, without getting a burn or a tan. Celebrate natural skin color. Put sun protective clothing everywhere, and then the areas that are not covered by clothing, put sunscreen.
Message delivered. Doctor, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Ivan Litmanov is a dermatologist and an associate professor at McGill University. We reached him today in Montreal.
We're not scientific at all. Pass by trees, flowers, fields of corn, we don't even see it. The white supremacists go to the bottom of the ocean and study one grain of sand, bring it and put it under a microscope. The black person passes by and say, "What are you doing there, Ralph?" See, I'm studying this grain of sand that I got 8,000 feet from the bottom of the ocean. And what are you studying a grain of sand for? I'm studying it because it's there. And I'm going to find out why it's there. And I'm going to find out everything about it. How it got there, what it does while it was there, what it can be used for by me. To dominate you. That's how my mind works. Well, how long are you going to study it? As long as it takes to figure out how I can use it to do a job on you. Because it's there, and everything that I look at is going to be serving my purpose. Everything that I hear about, I'm going to investigate it. That's my mission. That's how I go about doing things. What are you doing today? Well, I'm going to see my buddy, and we're going to get with the shooby-doo.
Scientists across the country are expressing alarm as the Trump administration dismantles another tool for understanding how the planet is changing. Starting this month, more than 900 deep-sea ocean sensors will be pulled out of the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans off the coasts of Washington, Oregon, Alaska, North Carolina, and Greenland. Researchers say these are some of the most critical ocean observation tools we have. William Brangham's here now to explain the latest. William, what are these sensors, and why do researchers tell you they're so important?
This was a decades-long, about $380 million research project. Hundreds of sensors, you described. Some of them sat on the surface of the ocean, some of them went down hundreds of feet. The way to think about this is like an ongoing medical checkup on the health of the oceans. How salty is it? How warm is it? How do the currents move in the ocean? Where are they moving? How are the fish doing down there? How is the ocean responding to climate change? I think it's hard to overstate just how critical oceans are to life on Earth. They regulate our weather. They provide food for millions of people all over the world. Over the last few decades, they have absorbed an enormous amount of the carbon pollution that we put up in the atmosphere has been taken up by the oceans, thus delaying some of the more negative consequences of climate change against us. These sensors were looking at all of those things, and now we are, in essence, stopping that research project totally.
So if this is such an important project, what exactly is the Trump administration's rationale for dismantling it?
I wish I could give you a clear answer on this. The National Science Foundation, which runs this, put out a statement justifying this that is incredibly hard to parse. Let me just read this statement. Here's what they said, quote, "The decision to de-scope aligns with NSF's wider strategy of a nimbler approach to prioritize support for evolving scientific priorities and emerging technologies, as well as smart life cycle management within its research infrastructure portfolio." If you can parse what that actually means, you're a smarter woman than I. Meanwhile, the scientific community could not have been clearer about what they see going on here. And that is another example, they argue, of the Trump administration turning off the ways in which we observe how the Earth is changing, specifically with relation to climate change. One researcher I was in touch with today described this as an intentional choice to embrace ignorance. I spoke earlier today with a researcher named Hillary Pavelski. She's at Boston College. She studies how CO2 moves from the atmosphere into the oceans. And she described our scientific understanding like one of those tall Jenga towers of understanding. And she said, this is one more example of pulling a tile out of that tower. Here's how she put it.
We don't know which piece of that Jenga tower is going to be really critical in seeing the changes that are coming in the future. And so we really are at a time that we need more rather than fewer sensors out in the ocean. And so this is really going in the wrong direction for what we need as a scientific community and as society.
William, I understand this is a particularly fraught time right now to be cutting this kind of research into ocean monitoring. Why?
It's because there are two enormously important phenomena happening in the oceans right now. The first one is in the Pacific Ocean. This is what is being called a super El Nino. This is characterized by incredibly warm ocean waters in the Pacific, which we are seeing right now. A strong El Nino can affect weather patterns all over the world, and this is now gearing up to be a potentially record-breaking El Nino. That's one event in the Pacific. Switching across to the Atlantic is a second system that goes by the acronym known as AMOC. AMOC is this colossal conveyor belt that moves ocean currents all over the globe, particularly in the North Atlantic. Some researchers have been detecting a signal that warming, particularly warming in the Arctic, could be disrupting AMOC and even overturning it. And if that were to actually happen, this would be considered one of the most grave tipping points that scientists fear could happen with regards to climate change. If that were to happen, this would cast incredibly harsh winters over Europe. It could send much more fierce hurricanes to the east coast of the United States. Most problematically, it could seriously distort the rain that feeds millions of people in Africa, in Asia, in South America. And so The researchers that I have been in touch with are arguing this is exactly the time that you do not want to be, quite literally, taking your eyes off the ocean.
William Brangham, thank you so much for the very latest there.
Thank you.
Dude, you scared the shit out of me. I mean, we say it's contamination. I mean, I'm thinking like an Ebola leak or something.
Ebola?
Yeah, it's a disease on the Discovery Channel where all your intestines sort of just slip right out of your butt.
Thank you. I know what Ebola is.
At least 2 people have been killed in Kenya amid protests against a new US-backed Ebola quarantine centre near the town of Nanyuki. Hundreds of demonstrators marched through the streets on Monday, blocking roads and burning tyres. Police fired tear gas to disperse them. The Kenyan government has defended the construction of the centre by citing a health treaty with the US. The BBC's Thomas Mkwana sent this report from the scene.
The community here says that they showed up on the streets yesterday peacefully to protest against the facility because there are schools, there are children, there are people who work in the facility that go back into these communities, and they're afraid that that could spread the virus here. The protest started in the morning, and by around noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it descended into violence, and there's talk of riots that descended on the town of Nanyuki on that other side, and the vandalism of a law court, and also a few shops. But police, we've seen a few police vehicles full of anti-riot police officers and also backup from the base to try and stop this protest from happening today. But people still say that they will show up to voice their discontent with what's happening. But there's reports of aircrafts showing up in the facility, aircrafts flying in, big aircrafts that are supposed to construct this facility that is now barred by the courts. It's still ongoing, and the President and the Ministry of Health looks firmly in control of what's happening, and they say that they're going to keep this up because it's good for the Kenyan public, but the people will show up again. Everything is safe today, but they're saying that they will show up. Protesters from more places outside Nanyuki will come here to try and bolster the protest that will hopefully not turn violent, but they may occur today, and we'll keep briefing you on what happens here.
Mohamed Yaqub Janabi is the Africa Regional Director for the World Health Organization. He's just come back from visiting Bunia, the epicenter of the Ebola outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo.
So what I saw on the ground was humbling and inspiring. I met with health workers, communities and religious leaders, partners, organizations working day and night under very extreme, difficult conditions. My message to those affected communities was very clear and direct. Ebola can be stopped, but only if we respond quickly, together and with trust, because I saw the contact tracing is still around 45%, and for our WHO standards, at least 80% there, and to reach 95. People, they tell you, they've got their belief. Some believe it's poison, some believe it's a curse, and it's a mining area that maybe is a blessing when more people die. One of the efforts Director General Tedros and myself when we were on the ground was to engage the community, because to me, any outbreak, including this one, there are 3 main things. 1, to engage the community. 2, to protect your frontline health workers. And 3 is a very rapid diagnosis, and you can't get the diagnosis without tracing the people. Communities need a very clear, very accurate information in the languages they use and from voices they trust. Local leaders, faith leaders, women's group, youth leaders. People must understand what is Ebola, how it is spread, the symptoms to look for, and why early care dramatically improves survival. We have discharged 6 of our health workers who contracted in the early stages. The message should never be do as we say, but rather let us work together to protect your family and your community. It's starting to get through. Community engagement is not an add-on. It's one of the most powerful tools we have to stop transmission, especially when you are dealing with the Bodibuja, which you don't have any validated therapeutics or any vaccine. So it's very important to educate. I'll give you a very living example. When my photos went out there in the social media, a very close family member wrote me, "Why don't you wear a mask? You are there." This is not an airborne disease. This is a direct contact with the patient, not direct contact to people who are healthy. direct contact with someone who is Ebola positive. Now, what brings even more challenges now is when borders are closed. When you close the borders, which the borders themselves, they are porous, people will just use illegal entry routes, which it will be very difficult to get the contact.
Mohammed Yaqub Janabi from the World Health Organization.
All the white people in Australia who were really prisoners that have been, they were prisoners that were so bad they didn't even want them to stay in the country. So they shipped them all over to Australia. Australia is made up of white people who were what you call throwaway white people. I mean, they just couldn't do nothing with them. I mean, so they, hey, send them thousands of miles away. We don't even want them in prisons here. They're too awful. Okay? So when they got to Australia...
Fiji has rejected a proposal by an Australian recycling company to ship thousands of tons of rubbish from all across the region to the Pacific nation to be burned for energy. It comes after a backlash from landowners and tourism operators. The plan to build an incinerator on the island archipelago capable of consuming 900,000 tons of waste a year was blocked over environmental and public health concerns. Some called it waste colonialism. The BBC's Phoebe Hobson has been looking into the story.
This project was the brainchild of two men, Rob Crumb, who is the managing director of the fashion label C.O.W.S, which is based in Paris, and Ian Malouf, who is a man who has made his fortune from rubbish disposal and this kind of transaction that, you send your rubbish elsewhere for cash. Their promise was that Fiji could receive 900,000 tons of waste, and that would then help produce 40% of the country's electricity, weaning them off their reliance on diesel.
And, as you say, people were against it. It was even labelled the Pacific ashtray.
Yeah, very strong words, lots of kickback on this. So this idea that you can send non-recyclable waste and then burn it, sometimes is seen as a bit of a green solution to this problem, but actually it can, increase the country's emissions. There's health concerns. They were going to build a whole different port for this project. And so also Fiji is a small country, about 1 million people. They rely so heavily on tourism. And the city where it was going to be built near Nadi is the sort of entry point for the tourism where people go in and explore, these stunning sort of beaches and amazing landscapes. And so an incinerator, you can imagine, would be a bit of an eyesore. But also people were worried about what's the impact of this, especially these projects that many people consider sort of like a bit of a colonial legacy of much wealthier nations sending what they overconsume to places that don't actually produce that much waste.
Yeah, I'm told it would have pushed up emissions in Fiji by about a quarter. And it's not the only example of a rich country trying to do this sort of thing.
No, it's not. I think it's important to recognise this is non-recyclables that would be burnt for energy, but in general this idea of waste being sent elsewhere, by environmental activists it's called waste colonialism, is so widespread. The United Kingdom does it, the US does it, Australia does it, and you send it to the global south. You have huge issues by this being slightly unregulated, waste ending up in large dumps. Is it properly being managed? So yeah, it's a very controversial issue.
Phoebe Hobson.
A terrible thing to waste. Environmental racism.
But first, the British oil giant Shell continued to operate a major pipeline in Nigeria, even though bosses knew it was causing widespread pollution, according to secret internal documents obtained by the BBC. Exchanges between senior executives, disclosed during a legal case, showed they understood the risks posed by one of the firm's main pipelines to both the local people and the environment, yet chose not to shut it down. Shell has always argued that pollution in the Niger Delta was caused by the theft and illegal refining of oil taken from the pipeline. Our Africa correspondent, Simijolo Osho, reports from Billy.
Decaying and dead mangroves along the banks of creeks are among the most visible signs of the legacy of oil giant Shell here in Billy, where families survived on fishing for generations, like 64-year-old Balafama Bruce, who says oil spills over the last decade have made it increasingly difficult.
Before 2011, here is a beautiful area. People play here, you go to the river here. The pollution has caused me that I have stopped my restaurant business. Because of that, I become poor.
So what do you do now?
I eat from hand to mouth.
Shell's pipeline that runs near Billy pumped up to 150,000 barrels a day. It's a part of the country blighted by attacks and organized theft of oil, including hundreds of illegal refineries, many of which caused pollution. The way Shell handled their operation is under the spotlight, and now documents obtained by the BBC show the company kept pumping despite knowing it was causing widespread pollution. One internal document from 2012 shows how Shell executives signed off to keep a Nigeria pipeline pumping for another 2 years, even though it didn't meet its usual technical standards.
They are not concerned about what happened to you. Their concern is continues to make profit.
That's Chief Bomadapa, the spokesperson for the Bile Kingdom Chiefs Council.
All that has happened in this environment is as a result of negligence. They don't care.
A 2013 email chain reveals Shell's then general manager for onshore assets warned colleagues an audit of Shell's operations in the country would fail. The following month, Shell executives launched a confidential working group codenamed Project Madrid. It unmasked the scale of the oil leaks, 100 illegal refineries polluting 9,000 hectares of water and 9,000 hectares of land. Shell says its decisions were based on complex factors like security and the environment, and that it cleaned up spills regardless of the cause. Shell has blamed oil spills here on theft from its pipelines, but the Project Madrid files show that bosses were considering carrying on pumping from its pipeline like the one that runs through here, even though they knew it would cause more pollution. One slide in the project posed a stark question. Are we comfortable to continue production knowing that further environmental damage will occur? A spokesperson for Shell told the BBC the documents selected are presented without the critical context of the operating environment in the Niger Delta at the time. He said, in isolation, they do not reflect the challenges of working against the backdrop of widespread organized criminality.
River is our farm, but now there is no way for us again.
Periwinkle harvester, 49-year-old Taminobiten Philip, says pollution has transformed the creeks where she once worked.
Because when you go to the bush, you will not see periwinkle again. And the odor is like a crude. Some places, when you go, you will perceive gas. They are collecting our oil every blessed day, but without benefit.
Her sentiments are echoed by Chief Bomadapa.
We might not even know the damage it has caused us in terms of health. We don't have farmland. We are surrounded by a river. Our people's means of livelihood is gone.
I'm back in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial hub. For decades, oil has driven this country's economy, bringing in billions for both Nigeria and the international companies operating here. Shell has repeatedly said pollution in the Niger Delta is largely driven by oil theft, a major issue in the region, with experts once estimating around 100,000 barrels a day were being stolen. The company is defending its position. But for the people I met, the impact of spills is visible in their daily lives, in the water, the land, and their livelihoods. Now, they're hoping this case brings answers and accountability.
That report from Nigeria by Simi Jolaosho.
Outdoors, we knew, was a real terror of life. The threat of being outdoors surfaced frequently in those days. Every possibility of excess was curtailed with it. If somebody ate too much, he could end up outdoors. If somebody used too much coal, he could end up outdoors. People could gamble themselves outdoors, drink themselves outdoors. Sometimes mothers put their sons outdoors, and when that happened, regardless of what the son had done, all sympathy was with him. He was outdoors, and his own flesh had done it. To be put outdoors by a landlord was one thing, unfortunate, but an aspect of life over which you had no control, since you couldn't control your income. But to be slack enough to put oneself outdoors, or heartless enough to put one's own kin outdoors, that was criminal.
The Trump administration plans to cut funding used to house thousands of New Yorkers who were chronically homeless. Housing providers say the policy shift would undo decades of progress to get people off the streets. WNYC's Karen Yee reports how it could affect one New Yorker who was homeless for 15 years.
I meet Eric Green in a building called the Senate on the Upper West Side.
Green is 60 years old and has called his single room here home for the last 6 years.
The sleep is very fantastic.
He even has a cat who he started caring for after her owner passed away.
It's been many, many moons since I had a cat. An animal, period. They named the cat marijuana. I said, oh, no, that's not a good name. It's not a good name. So I gave her Buttons, and it fits her too.
Green spent 15 years living on the street and in and out of shelter until he finally got into a supportive housing unit. It's housing designed for people who are formerly homeless and have other conditions like a mental illness or substance abuse disorder. The housing comes with support like case management and counseling. Green says it's changed his life.
Sitting up, I used to sleep sitting up. My feet swell up like this for me not resting. I didn't have a bed, I didn't have a key, I didn't have nothing.
Supportive housing programs can get money from federal, state, and city sources. Green's building relies on a federal grant through a program called Continuum of Care. The money funds about 7,000 units across the city, all to help chronically homeless New Yorkers. But the Trump administration wants to redirect this pool of money away from long-term housing and instead fund short-term housing programs that mandate drug treatment and work rules. Rod Jones leads Goddard Riverside, the provider of Green's building. He says the shift abandons a solution that works.
Housing is a fundamental ingredient in you building your life. It's not brain science. The most fundamental thing is, how do you ensure dosage if a person is not stable? If you don't stabilize a person, where does the provider meet them?
Officials with the Department of Housing and Urban Development say they want people to be self-sufficient. HUD Secretary Scott Turner said on Fox Business last year that ongoing street homelessness shows these solutions haven't worked.
What is the root cause of homelessness? Mental illness, drug addiction, drug abuse. During the Biden administration, it was just warehousing. It was a homeless industrial complex, basically a slush fund for nonprofits around the country.
HUD has issued multiple versions of how it plans to change funding, threatening to slash it and restricting programs from using racial preferences, but then took them back following lawsuits from states and congressional intervention.
The past year has absolutely been a roller coaster.
Rebecca Zangin is with the Supportive Housing Network of New York. She says it's still not clear how deep the cuts will be, but the best case scenario for the city,
there would be a 40% cut to existing programs, which means 2,800 households losing their housing assistance.
Some housing providers aren't sure if they'll secure more funding next year, but they're also in limbo now since HUD hasn't paid their contracts in months. They worry their tenants will have to go back to the city's shelter system or the streets at a time when the homeless population is near record high.
Let me take my goodies with me.
The Senate, where Green lives, was one of the first supportive housing buildings to open in New York City in 1988. It's undergoing a renovation. Green says the building, just like him, is under construction.
Not that I want to be perfect, but I want to make myself better, get on the right track, because I'm still going through emotional times.
He's stopped drinking, he's one of the tenant leaders, and helps his neighbors when they need some water, food, or snacks. He can see his primary care doctor, his therapist once a week in the building, and spend time with his cat.
The cat told me you're going to be all right, like gave me that brush. Like, you're going to be all right, don't worry about it. And I was like, wow. And I looked, I said, you know what, this cat is right. It's going to be all right.
He says if the program closes, he could try to live with his father, who is 94 years old. But Green says he's not sure many of his neighbors have anywhere else to go. Karen Yee, WNYC News.
The Delectable Negro, Human Consumption and Homoeroticism Within U.S. Slave Culture, by Vincent Woodard.
You know, it's hard enough to transition out of foster care when turning 18, but now many of these young adults are losing their federal food aid benefits. Stricter work or education requirements went into effect yesterday, June the 1st, as part of what President Trump calls his One Big Beautiful Bill. So now many young adults transitioning out of foster care may struggle to get enough to eat. Hannah Yang reports.
Maya Monk of Minneapolis went into foster care when she was about 10 years old.
During high school, she worked part-time jobs. When she turned 18 and left the foster home, Monk was briefly unhoused until she got her own place. Now 23, Monk is trying to build a life for herself.
I'm working on going to school. I'm working towards housing.
Something that helped her while transitioning out of foster care was the Federal Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP. But Monk lost her benefits on June 1st.
One thing I'm worried about how I'm going to eat. If the SNAP is my only way of eating, I'm going to have to find resources for food, how I'm going to get the resources for the food.
Minnesotans between the ages of 18 and 24 who aged out of foster care face all kinds of challenges, from trauma and housing instability to difficulty enrolling in school or finding a good job. They earn on average $575 a month. That's only about a third of what most other people their age earn, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. For Monk, SNAP was a big help, but she doesn't meet the new federal work requirements, and she says losing SNAP now is a huge setback.
It would give me more challenges in life due to the fact that I'm trying to get in school and trying to find housing. SNAP getting taken away from me will cause another, a domino effect for me.
Many young adults transitioning out of foster care didn't even receive SNAP benefits because they didn't know they were eligible, or because of the complicated application process. As a result, a 2024 research study found that 30% of these 18 to 24-year-olds were food insecure, according to the Center for the Study of Social Policy. Now there are fears that number will soar. Whitney Bailey is Community Engagement Manager for Foster Advocates, a Minnesota-based nonprofit seeking to improve the child welfare system.
SNAP isn't just supporting groceries, right? It is supporting the economic crisis that is being faced by many in our community, which is to afford everyday living with the lack of supports that they even have in the first place to engage in this transition to adulthood.
Bailey says that there's already little support in place to help young adults aging out of foster care, and these new federal rules will set them up for failure.
You lose your grocery money, so now where am I deciding between housing stability and being unhoused? Am I deciding between keeping gas in my car so I can make it to my job so I can keep the only other income I have?
The Minnesota Department of Children, Youth, and Families told NPR News in an email statement that the legislation restricting SNAP benefits, quote, is making it harder for people to get and keep food assistance, as the law expanded SNAP work requirements for youth aging out of foster care. But the agency said it did not have data on how many people would be affected. Maya Monk says she's worried about how these new SNAP work requirements will impact not just her, but other former foster youth.
This is how we eat. And so to just take everybody off is a lot. A lot of people are going to be in need. A lot of people are going to be hungry.
Foster advocates and some Minnesota lawmakers pushed for several bills during the just completed legislative session, specifically aimed at better supporting foster youth, including those transitioning out of foster care. But those bills ultimately stalled in committee and were never called for a vote before the session adjourned. Hannah Yang, NPR News, Mankato.
Billie Holiday, I sing your blues. Bet your life against me and I swear to God you'll lose it. Motherfuck the cops, we still singing for St. Louis. Motherfuck the cops, we still singing for St. Louis. Motherfuck the cops, we still singing for St. Louis.
A residential treatment center in Missouri has said its vision is to become to childhood trauma what St. Jude is to childhood cancer. But some former students say they left the facility more traumatized than when they arrived, and describe a chaotic and at times violent environment. The Midwest Newsroom's Luke Nozica reports.
Lilo Bauer remembers waking in 2017 to find their mother sobbing at their bedside. There were 3 strangers standing in their northeastern Illinois home.
They posed this question, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Bauer, who is non-binary, was being gooned. In the so-called troubled teen industry, it's when a secured transport company, often hired by a teen's parent, takes a child to a boarding school or a treatment center. Bauer had heard horror stories about kids being thrown in vehicles and taken against their will, so they went willingly. Bauer didn't know it yet, but they were being taken hours away to Change Academy at Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. Also known as KALO, the facility takes in kids from across the country, promising a therapeutic environment to help them heal from developmental trauma. But some former students say employees used restraints that turned into physical abuse.
They're throwing kids to the ground, being slammed to the ground. That happened to me so many times, being slammed to the ground, you end up covered with bruises, and that happened frequently.
Bauer is now among 15 former students who are suing K.O.W., alleging physical and emotional abuse by staff. Their attorney, Kansas City-based Robert Thrasher, says about half of his clients were also sexually abused by fellow residents.
And when the kids show up and the parents leave, or when the kids are brought there, they are greeted with an environment that is very it's a very combative environment. It's been described as a prison-like environment. Everybody is kind of fending for themselves.
In a statement, a K.O.W. spokesperson tells the Midwest Newsroom it does not tolerate staff aggression and denies all claims of abuse and neglect. K.O.W. also says the lawsuits are without merit and that the facility exists to serve students and families the broader system has given up on. Another former student is Taylor Kiesel. She attended K.O.W. in 2022 and 2023 and says she was in fight or flight mode 24/7.
They would instigate kids, especially like me with trauma. They'd corner you, get up in your face, get you to do something so that they have the jurisdiction to restrain you.
Kiesel was 16 and 110 pounds when, she says, an employee assaulted her.
He grabbed me and he slammed me down onto the asphalt. Got a concussion that I was never treated for. And he began hitting me. And this is a guy that's probably like, 6'2", really bulky compared to me, a teenage girl at the time.
K.O.W. is a licensed facility in Missouri, but does not currently hold a contract with the Children's Division. On rare occasions, Missouri has placed children in its legal custody there. Since K.O.W. opened in 2007, Missouri's Child Welfare Agency has documented 5 findings of physical abuse and 5 of sexual abuse involving K.O.W. Records also show that the Camden County Sheriff's Office has received at least 400 calls tied to K.O.W.'s address, including for reports of runaways, assaults, and sexual abuse. As for Lilo Bauer, they graduated last month with a bachelor's degree in social work from the University of Iowa, where they are now in a master's program. They plan to become a social worker for survivors of abuse, including those harmed in the troubled teen industry.
We can support kids and their mental health without ripping them from homes and labeling them troubled teens.
No agency in the state of Missouri is currently investigating K.O.W. For the Midwest Newsroom, I'm Luke Nozika in St. Louis.
I don't want us to lose sight that things are getting better. Each successive generation seems to be making progress in changing attitudes when it comes to race. Doesn't mean we're in a post-racial society. It doesn't mean that racism is eliminated. But when I talk to Malia and Sasha, and I listen to their friends and I see them interact, they're better than we are. They're better than we were on these issues. And that's true in every community that I've visited all across the country.
Here at Thoreau Middle School in Vienna, Mom Ashley Williams says students have called her son the N-word so many times he's lost count.
Very heartbreaking is the only way that I can describe it, right? There are children who will use the hard R N-word, and when he has addressed it, there has been times where these individuals have then gotten in his face and said it over and over and over again in his face.
And a few weeks ago, Williams says a group of girls allegedly poured water on her son's hair.
And when he asked them, why did you do that? Like, why would you do that? And their response was that they wanted to see what would happen to a black person's hair when it got wet.
Williams says she's met with school administrators multiple times to share her concerns, but that the racism keeps happening. She shared with News 4 a set of 8 emails from the principal to parents over the past 2 school years, each email describing a different racist or anti-Semitic incident at Thoreau, such as swastikas drawn on bathroom walls, Post-its, and a student's hand, students circulating a racist website with slurs and hate speech, and students using racial slurs in the hallway.
This is a problem and emails won't fix it, right? This racism is like the weather, it's the climate, it's everywhere.
According to one of the emails sent by the principal to parents in April, Thoreau Middle School held a lesson for 7th graders on the history of the swastika and a meeting with 8th graders on the consequences of hate speech. The school's principal writing to parents, "We want to be absolutely clear that this type of behavior is completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated at our school. Every student deserves to feel safe and affirmed in our learning environment." Williams says she asked the school to set up a group for students of all backgrounds to talk about overcoming racism, but was told there weren't enough resources. She hopes parents will address it at home.
If you're a bystander and you're watching these things happen, you have to teach your children how to have these conversations, how to be an ally.
For now, she and her son are counting down the days until the end of the school year. In Vienna, Amy Cho, News 4.
We received a statement from Fairfax County Public Schools late today calling Ashley Williams' account, quote, deeply disturbing. It goes on to say, we are continuing to speak directly with the family so we can listen to their experiences, better understand their concerns, and ensure their voice is heard. What they share will help inform the steps we take moving forward.
When you don't vote, you can't sit on a jury. You have no right to complain about the police because you won't even go and vote so you can even sit on a jury. As I've said to the cows when I first started to call in, I spent 11 years on a job where I worked for a bank and had to sit in court day after day after day after day. And I watched them select juries. I watched black people going to jail, black people having white probation officers, and the whole judicial system just truncated with white supremacy. And a great deal of it is just some of it could be lessened if black people simply voted.
A judge says a tiny Delaware beach town can still let non-humans vote in its elections. WHYY's Chris Barish has the story about Fenwick Island's unusual voting rights policy.
In 2008, Fenwick changed its charter to permit any so-called artificial entity to vote in town council elections if it owned one of about 800 properties. That meant corporations, trusts, partnerships, and limited liability companies could cast ballots. In the 2024 election, 109 of those non-humans voted, comprising about 1/4 of the total ballots. The Delaware ACLU recently sued Fenwick, however. The civil rights group claims the policy amounts to an unconstitutional violation of the state's guarantee of free and equal elections.
We believe voting should be for the people, not corporations. Allowing corporations to vote in local elections harms our democracy and dilutes the voices of voters.
That's ACLU lawyer Andrew Bernstein. But Superior Court Judge Craig Carstens dismissed the case last week. He ruled that the ACLU hadn't alleged discrimination or proved any unfairness. Perhaps more importantly, the judge noted that Delaware law recognizes corporations as quote-unquote persons. Carstens wrote that each natural person gets one vote, the same as any artificial entity. Fenwick Mayor Natalie Magdeburger wouldn't talk with WHYY, but she sent a statement that said most non-human voters are family trusts, and the town system, quote, gives everyone a voice. Bernstein said the ACLU is considering an appeal to the state Supreme Court. From the Delaware desk, Chris Barish, WHYY News.
Why is this stuff happening? The New York Times editorial today. The Trump effect and how it spreads. It says we are on the brink, under Trump, on the brink of fascism. New York Times, all the news that's fit to print, editorial 12/10/2015. I say fascism is end-stage white supremacy.
Journalist Michael Edison Hayden has spent years tracking extremism in America. His new book, Strange People on the Hill, tracks what happened when a far-right group moved its headquarters to a small town in rural West Virginia. Amna Navaz talked with Hayden for our PBS News podcast, Settle In. And they spoke about his book and the sharp divisions in American politics right now. Here's an excerpt of that conversation.
I mean, this is real life, as you mentioned, and there is a story, and there's a reason why we choose it. And I think that the most important thing is like, you know, do we really want to live like this? You know? I think
it's hard for you to talk about.
Yeah. Unexpected. Yeah, it's like, do we really want to live like this? I don't know. My friend growing up, he's a Republican, and like he's my Mets Jets type friend and stuff like that. I spent an entire year not talking to him because he was, he supported Trump in the first election, and I was going through all those threats, and I was like, I can't even talk to you, man. I don't want to talk to you. And he said it was. Sorry.
That's okay. Take a minute.
He said it was like the toughest year of his life.
That you weren't talking.
Yeah, that I wouldn't talk to him. And he also said another thing to me, which I thought was really interesting, because he's really like, I mean, he's just he got into Republican, he's a business guy, you know what I mean? He's not thinking about this stuff like that. So I forced him to think about it in a totally different way.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, when I was a kid, when we were kids, basically, so we used to play Little League together and stuff. Like, the president was just a guy on TV. And that was true. We didn't care. We didn't have to care. I knew there were two parties, and that was it. And I just like, sort of questions like, do we really want to live like this? Do we want to have every day, like we wake up and there's like a new thing that we have to go to war over? I just feel like what has happened to our country since extremism became the dominant strain of politics has been so painful, and it's taking years off of people's lives. And I can't imagine that people really want to live like this.
What you shared about your friend, though, is I think something a lot of people can relate to. More and more Americans in particular will have folks in their lives who they disagreed with over politics. 20 years ago, it might have meant you just don't talk politics anymore, and now it means broken friendships, broken families in some cases. Are you and your friend reconnected again?
Oh yeah, we're cool. You know, really cool. He actually he subscribes to a podcast I co-host. We're reconnected, but I do have people in my own family where it's difficult, where there's certain things that we can't talk about, or they can't show the same, if everybody in the family shares some article that I wrote and stuff like that, they can't chime in on it because they're worried that it's gonna this might go against President Trump and that. So while I've got I'm on this team and so forth.
I think the central question you asked there is, do we really want to live like this?
Yes.
Is something you address so well in the book, too. And the other part of it, in our conversation and in the book, is this idea that all politics, as we all talk about it, all politics is personal.
Yes.
Right? It shows up in our personal lives.
Yes. And I think how much of this is really about improving the material conditions of the people who support it, and how much of this is really about stigmatizing or destroying imagined enemies, or maybe people think real enemies, but I would say imagined. That we've gone very far off track from what this political system is technically supposed to be. We're supposed to be trying to figure out how to improve our material conditions. How are you going to get people health care? How they're going to get fed? How their kids going to get educated? How they're going to get jobs when they get out of school? So much of it is talking about sticking it to somebody else.
You can watch that full episode of Settle In on our PBS News YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Say that again.
Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Now at 10, a hate crime investigation. An Amazon package containing Juneteenth material ripped up and burned. Boston 25 News reporter Daniel Coates is on scene outside of the African American Museum in Boston.
So if you value this history, if you value this work, we're asking you to step up and join us in this fight.
A call to action for Beacon Hill and beyond. The Museum of African American History CEO Noel Trent said their property was targeted and destroyed earlier this week. Boston police believe this is the man responsible.
We are deeply familiar with this happening.
Ring camera from a nearby home shows someone leaving the quiet, secluded alley that leads to the museum. Moments before, that man is believed to have ripped open a package full of Juneteenth celebration materials inside, scattering them near the front door and burning the rest in this corner.
One small ember and the right gust of wind could devastate this community. It could also devastate these buildings. And so we take that threat very, very seriously.
Boston Police and the National Park Service are still searching for this older man and investigating a potential motive, a threat near a beacon of African American history in Boston.
There is resistance to that. And sometimes that resistance has been verbal, but it has also been physical, meaning the destruction of the buildings that represent the institutions that are valuable to them.
These threats are nothing new. In 2018, their Nantucket location was targeted with hateful graffiti. Trent and her team are working with investigators to safeguard the oldest existing black church building in the country, just weeks away from Juneteenth.
And we are dedicated to continue to tell these stories. We have actively resisted this in the past, and we will do so in this moment as well.
Again, Boston Police and the National Park Service are investigating this incident as a hate crime. If you recognize the individual in the photo that Boston Police released, you're urged to come forward and help in this active investigation. On scene in Beacon Hill, I'm Daniel Coates for your local station, Boston 25 News.
There is a reason that these cases exist. And I want to also talk about, in this case, they talked about mental health, but also gun control. And we have to begin to understand, I say you can't understand the gun mania if you don't understand racism and white supremacy. The gun is the answer to conscious and or subconscious, the answer, the response to the white collective feeling they can be genetically annihilated by black genetic material. And the gun is a great equalizer. I encourage everybody to get a copy of the ISIS papers and read.
The Justice Department has proposed sweeping changes to gun policy in recent weeks. Gun rights groups see these moves as a huge win, but gun control advocates are very worried. NPR's Jacqueline Diaz joins us now to break down what's happening with the government's approach to the Second Amendment. Hi, Jacqueline.
Hi.
Okay, let's start with these proposed changes as a whole. Just broadly speaking, why might gun rights advocates be feeling pretty good right now?
Well, that's because the Trump White House has fully embraced itself as the most Second Amendment-friendly administration in years. Here's Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche at a press conference last month.
The Second Amendment will never be treated as a second-class right in the Trump administration. President Trump has been clear on this from day one. The Second Amendment is not negotiable.
And the DOJ is working to finalize some 30 changes that have been on the wish list of the gun industry for a long time. John Comerford with the National Rifle Association even calls it the golden age for the Second Amendment.
The golden age. Okay, so what specifically has the Trump administration been doing lately then?
Yeah, so the DOJ is working on proposals that they say cuts red tape for gun owners and the industry. But there are two proposals in particular that the gun control groups are really concerned about. One proposes scrapping background check requirements for some private gun sellers. The second would lift a ban on pistol stabilizing braces. Those braces allow pistols to be fired more like rifles. They were used in the 2021 Boulder, Colorado grocery store shooting that killed 10 people. Here's Chris Brown, the president of the nonprofit gun control advocacy group Brady.
There's no public safety argument that could possibly be made for why you would want to eliminate the regulation of stabilizing braces.
And I have to add here, this all comes as guns continue to be a major cause of death in the U.S. and the leading cause of death for children aged 1 to 19. The Pew Research Center says about 44,000 people died of gun-related injuries in the U.S. in 2024.
Okay, well, beyond what the administration is doing, Congress has also acted, right? Or maybe it's better to say Congress opted not to act. What's happening there exactly?
Yeah, that's right. For Congress, I think it's best to describe the win for the industry there as no news is good news. Last summer, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill. Included in that massive bill was the elimination of a $200 tax for silencers, short-barreled rifles, and other weapons. The tax, which was from the 1930s, was meant to serve as a deterrent on these deadly weapons. That's been the main action in Congress under Trump so far. Robert Spitzer is a political science professor and has written several books on gun policy. Congress is so contentious right now, so Spitzer says,
at the federal level, there's no expectation that we will see any new gun laws anytime soon, even though the public consistently and continues to support most of the gun law proposals that are discussed in the public realm.
And others on the gun industry side say gun control is not a winning issue for Democrats anymore. There's some data that backs that up. Support for a ban on handguns dropped to a near record low after the 2024 election. But that same Gallup poll also showed that a majority of Americans supported stricter laws regarding the sale of guns.
And just real quick, Jacqueline, I mean, there are also the courts. What kind of gun rulings have we seen in recent years there?
Yeah, so a 2022 Supreme Court ruling that said for a gun law to be constitutional, it must be similar to a law at the nation's founding in the late 1700s. And in the wake of this decision, a lot more conservative courts are knocking down laws restricting guns.
That is NPR's Jacqueline Diaz. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
The man knot, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
We begin tonight's broadcast with a follow-up to last night's not guilty verdict of Rick Chow. A day after he was acquitted of murdering 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack Belton, we saw reaction, or we're getting reaction, from the community. Our crews saw protesters gathered outside Chow's former gas station off of Park Lane Road in Columbia. Richland deputies also at the store now at this hour. They have been there since shortly after the verdict was announced last night. News 19's Whitney Sullivan speaking with criminal defense attorney John Mobley tonight. He was asked, where does he believe things possibly broke down for the prosecution in presenting his case?
From opening statements, one of the vast contrasts that I saw between the prosecution and the defense, where I believe the prosecutors dropped the ball, is they didn't really do much to humanize the victim in the case. And I remember listening to both opening statements. And while the prosecutor, the solicitor, did mention he was 14 years old, that was kind of it. Had I been prosecuting that case, I would have talked about not only his age, but where he went to school, what he liked to do for fun, what video games he liked. I would have wanted to bring him to life so the jurors could have some image of this young man, this life in their mind, and they just didn't do that. Another something I would have done differently if I was a prosecutor, and I don't think that they really leaned into the fact that this teen was hunted. They talked about him being chased out of the store about a bottle of water. That was kind of their big theme. They kind of hung everything on that, all about a bottle of water. This teen was hunted. I mean, 130 yards. And I remember when, in opening statements, when they talked about that, one thing I thought was great was he described that it was that 130 yards would be the equivalent of a football field, goalpost to goalpost. Had I given that opening statement, I would have had that picture up there. I would have had a visual picture of a football field from goalpost to goalpost so the jury could see how far they hunted. These two grown men hunted this 14-year-old. And I would have used that word. I wouldn't have said chased. I would have said hunted. That's how I would have really portrayed this, and which I think is accurate, quite frankly. Now, on the flip side, the defense, in their opening statement, they talked about the defendant's credentials and how he came to America and how he built his business and his family. They gave the jury all this information to humanize this person. So, I mean, big difference. I think that made a big difference in the jury's mind because they can identify with one side more than the other.
Again, criminal defense attorney John Mobley with his opinion about what happened in this case. And new tonight, we're hearing from the Fifth Circuit Solicitor Byron Gibson on the not guilty verdict. He did issue a statement late today saying that last night's verdict has brought on strong emotions from our local and national communities. He added that he's disappointed with last night's outcome and continues to believe that Chow's actions were not justifiable. However, he adds that he respects our criminal justice system and the jury's decision. For complete coverage of the Rick Chow trial from the past week, including last night's verdict, just download the free News 19 app by scanning the QR code on your screen there. You can watch courtroom recaps, read the latest developments, and catch up on every major moment in the case.
We're gonna pause this for the benefit of all y'all who never saw Soul Food. Soul Food is a movie about a big, humongous black grandmother, aptly named Big Mama. Big Mama demonstrates her love by feeding herself and her offspring enormous amounts of pig lard. Then, get this, Big Mama's arteries are so clogged, they gotta amputate her arm.
It was her leg!
Right, okay, whatever, leg. Then, she dies of a heart attack. Or another stroke, or something.
God called her home.
And what does the family do after she dies? They get together for a Sunday dinner and eat the same food that just killed Big Mama. The same food! They didn't learn a lesson. Nobody went on a diet, and that's the end of the movie.
Should ultra-processed foods be considered the new war on tobacco? That's the argument that dozens of researchers are making in a series of papers published today in the American Journal of Public Health. They say that these foods, things like packaged chips, snacks, and cookies, which dominate the American diet, have become major drivers of poor health, and the time to act is now. Here to tell us more is NPR health correspondent Maria Godoy. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Elsa.
Okay, so explain, what is the connection between tobacco and ultra-processed foods here?
Well, back in the 1980s, tobacco giants bought up some of the biggest food firms. So, for example, Philip Morris used to own General Foods and Kraft, and R.J. Reynolds owned Nabisco. And then this was the era when ultra-processed food production really ramped up in the U.S. Laura Schmidt is a researcher at UCSF, and she's been studying old tobacco company archives. She says tobacco firms had amassed a lot of research on how to make cigarettes more pleasurable and addictive with chemical additives, and records show they deliberately applied this knowledge to food.
The very technologies that were used to figure out how to optimize the addictive properties of nicotine using added sugar and artificial flavorants, that core technology was transferred from the tobacco industry to ultra-processed food development.
Schmidt says these kinds of additives have now become one of the defining characteristics of what makes a food ultra-processed.
That's fascinating. Are there other similarities between, like, the tobacco playbook and the ultra-processed foods playbook?
Yeah, marketing strategies. So, for example, take the concept of king-size candies. We've all seen these.
Yeah.
That term king-size actually originated as a way to market longer cigarettes. Or, for consumers worried about health, tobacco companies used to sell so-called light cigarettes. Well, they made light versions of foods, too. Schmidt found a quote from a former Philip Morris CEO who said that ultra-processed foods and cigarettes were really similar businesses. He said they were both low-cost consumer packaged goods with a huge market.
Okay, so that's marketing, but ultimately we are talking about people's health here, and we know that cigarettes are linked to cancer, right? So what does this research say about ultra-processed foods and health?
Well, there's already a lot of research linking high consumption of ultra-processed foods to poor health outcomes, so from obesity to diabetes to all-cause mortality. Several of the new papers here add to this body of evidence. For instance, one study followed more than 5,000 older Americans over 10 years, and it found that higher consumption of ultra-processed foods was linked to an increased risk of cognitive impairment and dementia. Another study surveyed a nationally representative group of 2,000 adults about ultra-processed foods, and it found that across party lines, the majority of people who responded said they want the government to regulate them. Here's Lindsay Steele. She's a professor of nutrition at the University of North Carolina and an author of one of these papers.
It feels like we've reached a tipping point between the strength of the science, the public support, and then also political will. And those three factors combined, to me, suggest that we might be at a place where we start to see real policy action on this topic the way that we did in tobacco.
Many policy experts say we are likely to see change at the state level first. We've already seen states pass bans on synthetic dyes in foods, for instance, and some experts say litigation may be next. In other words, state attorneys general filing suit against food companies alleging damage to the public health, sort of like the lawsuits we saw against tobacco companies in the 1990s.
Yeah. That is NPR's Maria Godoy. Thank you, Maria.
My pleasure.
See, we're not talking about a party. See, because we are party-oriented, and they know this. This is why the code says a party consists of what? One male, one female. If a third person shows up, you're supposed to be having a meeting. So, I mean, I read something that Frederick Douglass has on his pillow over there in his house in the Washington Post. It's an old saying, 2 is company, 3 is a crowd. Okay. Now, you can definitely apply that. See, because black people have this thing, we got to get together. Get together and do what? Have a party. See? That's all we can think about. And then when we go there, we don't know what we're supposed to do when we get there. That's why we do anything. Before the thing is over, it lasts long enough, somebody's going to get hurt.
New tonight, loved ones remembering a man shot in a Milwaukee County park this weekend. They say he was killed during his 4-year-old son's birthday party. Deputies responded to Center Street Park at 64th and Center around 6:45 last night. The park is along the Milwaukee-Wauwatosa border. Family identified the victim as Pepe Sakisi Bell Jr. And 12 News' TJ Dysart spoke to loved ones grappling with the tragic loss.
Now my nephew dead, my is dying out here. My brothers is dying out here, bro. And for what?
Anger.
He came out too early. He left too early.
Sadness.
This don't make no sense. These people need to put these guns down.
And pain, written on the faces and echoed through the voices of loved ones of Pepe Sakisi Bell Jr.
It's breaking me. It's breaking me.
The 22-year-old gunned down at Center Street Park off 64th and Center, right along the Tosa-Milwaukee border. The shots ringing out around 6:45 Saturday night, all of it during his son Jair's 4th birthday party.
Now, Pepe's mother tells me it was just before 7 o'clock on Saturday when she got the worst call a mother could ever receive, later arriving on scene and seeing her son dead underneath a sheet.
Have you even been able to really process it yet?
No. I cry here and there. I haven't been able to really eat or drink.
Milwaukee County Sheriff's deputies arrested a 25-year-old woman at the scene, saying she was carrying 2 firearms and that she and Sakisi Bell knew each other. Do you know why she would have even wanted to kill your son?
I don't know. I don't know. I can't tell you what went through people's mind.
Loved ones say Sakisi Bell was more than just family. He was the person who would do anything for just about anyone. But there was nothing he loved more than his 2 children.
He loved his kids. The kids are not doing too good.
Those children now without a father, and a family now holding on to the memories of a man who gave them everything. Reporting in Milwaukee, TJ Dysart, WISN 12 News.
The Wauwatosa School District sent a letter to parents saying that some students were at Center Street Park during Saturday's shooting. Wauwatosa plans to provide help to any students who may need emotional support.
We don't know the first thing about violence. Except we are sure of one thing when it comes to us and white people and violence. We know who will get the worst of it. We do know that. Now, have we figured that out yet? Why is that? Black people plus white people plus violence. Who's going to get the worst of it? Black people, anywhere in the world. Now, have we figured out why that is? No. We don't even want to think about it.
Opening statements are set for tomorrow in the trial of a former Frisco ISD student accused of murdering a fellow student at a track meet. Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes.
And I'm Steve Eager. It's 9 o'clock. Karmelo Anthony is charged with murder for the stabbing death of Austin Metcalf last year. The 12-person jury, plus 6 alternates, were selected today. Just over 10% of Collin County's population is black. There will be no black jurors. Before the final jury was seated, the defense objected to the final 3 black candidates being struck by the prosecution. Fox 4's Amelia Jones is here to explain what it all means for the trial. Amelia.
Heather, Steve, before the jury was seated, the issue of race in the jury selection process was brought up by the defense. Karmelo Anthony's defense team argued that some potential jurors may have been unfairly struck because of race. This is what's called a Batson challenge in legal terms. But the judge denied it, saying prosecutors gave race-neutral explanations. Wednesday morning, potential jurors returned to the Collin County Courthouse. Attorneys for both sides each got 1 hour and 45 minutes to question the reduced panel. They were questioned on a variety of topics, including their views on race, how they feel about serving on this case, and whether they would hold it against the defendant if he chose not to testify on his own behalf. The defense also tried to gauge if the potential jurors would be uncomfortable giving Karmelo Anthony a lower sentence if there's a guilty verdict.
Question prospective jurors in this way, what we're left with is a jury that can approach the evidence fairly with an open mind, apply the law as the judge instructs it to the evidence, and then as was noted today, move on to a sentencing phase of the trial as well.
Anthony is accused of fatally stabbing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf last year at a Frisco ISD track meet. Witnesses say the two got in an argument and Anthony stabbed Metcalf in the chest. Metcalf died in his twin brother's arms. Police say Anthony claimed he acted in self-defense. The high-profile case has become racially charged, fueled in large part by online speculation, rumors, and misinformation. Race and jury selection became a focus in court Wednesday after defense attorneys raised what's called a Batson challenge, a legal objection used when one side believes potential jurors were removed because of race. The defense attorneys raised concern about 3 black women who were potential jurors, the only black people left to potentially be on the jury.
The party challenging the strike at that point is going to have to prove purposeful discrimination.
Anna Offit is a law professor at Southern Methodist University and not involved in the case. She teaches courses on criminal law and a seminar on juries. Offit says Batson challenges are rarely made and they're rarely successful.
The reason for that is it is not very challenging for a party to be able to come up with a number of, neutral reasons, other reasons that a strike might have been exercised.
The prosecution said the 3 jurors were struck because they were all educators. The stabbing happened at a school function involving students. Ultimately, the judge presiding over the case, John Roach, denied the defense's challenge, saying the state had race-neutral reasons. As a court spokesperson confirmed, this means there are no black jurors on the panel. And depending on the outcome of the trial, this Batson challenge and jury selection process could come into question for any possible appeals.
When Batson concerns have been raised on appeal is exactly this sort of inquiry into, or prospective jurors being asked the same questions, the same types of questions substantively, the same number of follow-up questions, It may not be enough to say these prospective jurors have been stricken because of their particular occupation.
No electronics are allowed in the courtroom. The public was not able to hear both sides ask potential jurors questions. At the end of Wednesday, 12 jurors and 6 alternates were chosen. The judge instructed them to report to the courthouse at 7:30 on Thursday morning, and court will be held until 6 p.m. Judge Roach told jurors court will be held on Saturdays as well, in hopes of getting the case wrapped up by June 12th. Karmelo Anthony was in the courtroom today. He was wearing a suit and tie with a purple shirt, purple being the chosen color his supporters have been wearing to court as well. He also looks different than the last time we saw him publicly. His hair is now closely cropped. He had a stoic expression throughout today's proceedings and did appear to take notes at times. Opening statements are set to begin tomorrow at 9 a.m. Heather, Steve?
Amelia Jones, thank you.
Fox 4 will bring you extensive coverage of the Karmelo Anthony trial. For the latest court developments, go to fox4news.com, our social pages, and the free Fox Local app.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, June 6, 2026, so I have been told. Here, hopefully, to share constructive information with non-white people, victims of white supremacy. That case, Karmelo Anthony murder trial happening in Frisco, Texas, where I remember when this case happened last year, I remember I read these exact demographics then, and I pre-visioned it. I said, ooh, ain't gonna be no black people on this jury. I said, demographics in Frisco, Texas, 45% white, 33% Asian, 10% Hispanic, so-called, 10% black, and then 8% two or more races. I said, with those dynamics, very easy. No black people on the jury. Could be all white, but easily no black people on the jury. Now we get to the point where the trial, and I think at this point at the trial, the prosecution has rested. So we'll see what the defense does, see how long it takes them to deliberate down in Texas. But that's where we are at this point, June 6, 2026, in the trial, Karmelo Anthony, privileged black male. I posted online, and I'll ask here, attempted black parents, if you are not a parent, we have retired firefighter, others who work with children, work in schools, educators, lots of those, or people who have, if you have cousins, nephews, nieces, have you used this trial as an opportunity to teach non-white children, black children especially, about the logic of white supremacy, racism, even the logic of counter-violence? Take advantage. This comes up, frequently, and what to do, and, going out in public and somebody says something slick, and how are you going to respond? Take notes. Fuller used to tell you, I played that segment, Fuller talking about counter-violence. Fuller, we had whole program in the archives, 2013. Fuller visited on the cows, and we talked about counter-violence, these types of situations. Really talking about ninth area of people activity, war. And he said, you're out in public, and some, even if it's especially someone classified as white, they say something, call you a nigger or whatever it is time to go. That is not the time. Ooh, I'm going to show you, and where's my razor? And that is not the time. However, and it's in the archives. He said, and he discussed it many times, wrote his book where he talked about maximum emergency compensatory action, MECJ if you have the older version. But he talked about, or hear him talking about the older versions. But he did say, hey, you can defend yourself. And even people who say, hey, if I'm out in public and I see a black female or child being abused, or even myself, I'm not no coward. I don't back down. No problem. Go right ahead. He simply said, now, you got to remember, it's not just going to be whatever happens today, June 6th, because this Karmelo Anthony thing, I said, ooh, I remember when all this went down last year. We're halfway through 2026. And I said, oh, man, I remember this from last year. I pre-visioned. Ain't going to be no black people on this jury, and it ain't. See, you got to think about all of that when you get ready to, especially you get ready to engage in some counter-violence with a white person, even if they provoked you and did whatever. You got to think about all of that. So a year now, when I'm ready to go to court, there's no black people on the jury, and I got my public defender, and I'm wearing purple or whatever color that they pick for me, I'm still going to be cool with this decision. I think he could have got the death penalty in Texas. I have to verify to make sure I'm not giving out Gus T. slop, but I think I won't say Mr. because he was 17 at the time all this happened, Karmelo Anthony, unless I've been misinformed. But I think there was a possibility, because, they will try a black 17-month-old as an adult. So certainly 17, you pretty much grown raping Negro male by then. So, hey, I think Karmelo Anthony could have got the death penalty in this case. So it's a whole lot to think about if it's going to be some counter violence. I'm ready for it all. You got to, and sometimes these things happen quick. Fuller talked about that. That's why his recommendation was try to flee if you can. We are very vulnerable as victims of white supremacy. Man, and if you choose not to, you got to be thinking about this in advance. And he would say, especially for children, because, we can kind of be impulsive, and even black people, really, we are in a childlike state from 8 to 88, maybe even older if we get to hang around here long enough. So we are kind of impulsive and that sort of thing. Slow down and think. Especially anything out in public. Slow down. Slow down. Slow down. I think this was the case. I guess we'll get all the details. They were comparing him to Kyle Rittenhouse. Isn't that the one? He had the firearm out in public? Like, woo. Slow down. But this would be one I would recommend, because you'll get updates. There's more to come. We'll see the verdict and all the rest of it. So, yeah. Let us use this as another tragic illustration, the system of white supremacy and the lethal ramifications while we got to be on our assignment. And hey, I said he was 17, I believe, unless I was misinformed. I know he wasn't no 29-year-old, 20-year-old. I know it ain't none of that. I'm pretty sure he's about 17. Karmelo Anthony. Talk to your offspring. And what I said before, I won't say teach, because you might get in trouble. They might DEI you out of the classroom or out of the entire school district. But if you have nieces, cousins, black children that you have access to, talk to them about racism, white supremacy, and talk to them about this case. A lot of it could just be asking questions. Did you hear about this case? See about this case? What do you think about all of that? What if something like that happened to you? Has something like that happened to you where, a white boy says something aggressive to you, or gives you a dirty look, or whatever it is, calls you a racist name, whatever it is? How would you respond? See what they say. You think you'd want to be in that courtroom a year later? No black people on the jury. Your family out there. You got to pick a color now. Got to pick a color of support. What you think? Fuchsia? Teal? What you think? Just get that brain computer working a little bit, because Fuller did say, generally speaking, black people, white people, and violence, we lose. He said, now why is that? We might get a lesson out of it. You might say, well, hey, I think the black boy, didn't he kill the white boy? That's what this whole trial is about. Yep, so we'll keep that in mind as we go through that. Is it true? Is this a case that we still say, yep, every time, the black people, we lose? We will see. Let's see. Tidbits to share before I get to the other news tidbits and whatever else. Upcoming broadcasts as well. This past week on Wednesday. Okay, so many things. I got discombobulated with the beginning of June, and I suggest, and even that program with Mr. Earl Swift. Man, I was trying to reschedule. I think I had told you all. There was supposed to be a trial here in the Pacific Northwest. This is like total bot counter-racism product here. There was this gang of white supremacist race soldiers right here in western Washington state. They robbed a military base and stole all these firearms and got all this white supremacist paraphernalia. They were arrested, and they were supposed to start, they had their day in court beginning this past Monday. And so I had done FOIA requests to get all this incredible information about this paramilitary nest that was right here literally in Gus T's backyard, and then super excited to go to the trial that I thought was going to begin on Monday, which was scheduled to begin on Monday, but it was continued. But it was continued really late. But anyway, Mr. Swift was supposed to be with us on the 4th, and we had scheduled this program like way in advance. And so I think more than a month in advance. And so I was like, oh no, I got to cover the paramilitary cell right here in Washington state. I got to cover that in my own region. Jesus Christ. And so I'm talking to Mr. Swift like, man, maybe we can reschedule, because I got to do this trial, blah, 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 and all this. And literally, as we're trying to figure out like a rescheduled date, I reload the page for the trial and see, oh, wait a minute, they done filed a motion, like almost like today, they done filed a motion, like, what? November? What? Halt everything. Let's keep the original date, which was wrong to begin with, on a Thursday. So wackiness through and through. But anyway, stayed fast. Hopefully folks were able to hear that. I think generally constructive to have a white man on the program. And we still did have neutralizing workplace racism. It was just on Wednesday this past week as opposed to Thursday. Even talked about castration of black males. That program Wednesday was 1 hour early because they had a screening of the documentary film Library of Hope. This screened at the University of Washington this past Wednesday, and they screened it at 7 p.m. So I had to hop off the program and literally run over so I could see this film, which was done by Sophia Ferguson, classified as a white woman. And I asked, I had strongly considered recording and uploading. I've done that, many times over the years, gone to events in a wide range of geographic locations, even while I was in Wisconsin and other locations where I've recorded, uploaded, so you can, especially if I participate in the dialogue, get to ask questions and that sort of thing, which I did here. The reason that I hesitated here was what I just said, documentary film. Now, I could have recorded, and so you could have heard what was said in the documentary, but just seems a little bizarre. Yes, I guess you could have listened and all that, and then at least you would have had an audio context for the discussion that followed, which I participated in, but it's just not quite it's a documentary. It's got the audio and the visual, and you'd be missing, a lot of content. So I didn't record, and then I regretted it afterwards, because I generally think any time that victims of white supremacy get to question white people about white supremacy racism, that is constructive. There is so little of that, in my opinion, there is so little of that happening, especially in public, that is astronomically constructive in my view, and we need to try to do more of it as often as possible. We can even get better about asking our questions. So they do the film, which is about, as I stated, the film is called Library of Hope. And so this white woman, Miss Ferguson, the film is about, they go to, these are UW students or graduate students or graduating students, whatever the mix, but they go to New Zealand, Christchurch, New Zealand, and they do all this filming and talking about libraries there and what the role of libraries is, and libraries in this environment of subversion and book banning and librarians being threatened and all the rest of it. This is a short documentary film. When I say short, it's say 30 minutes or so, give or take. And so they, talk about all of that. No mention of white supremacy racism. And I don't believe there were any black people in the film. Like, they talked to a number of these, all of the main speakers are white people who are in this program at the University of Washington, preparing to be a librarian. And some of them, mostly, of course, white women. The filmmaker, white woman, and they talk about how, some of them, you talk about, they didn't realize that you had to be super credentialed to be a librarian. They thought, you could just go and, I love books, I love reading, I can read, that sort of thing. They didn't know, like, oh wow, you have to go through this big, expensive, collegiate program and all that to be able to say, oh, okay, now I'm fully trained and competent to be a librarian and ban all the niggers from the library. And so they get to the Q&A and say, of course, I've got to ask questions. I looked around in the theater. There were a couple of black people, but now, again, we are in Washington State, so there are not a lot of black people in Washington State. there are not a lot of black students at the University of Washington, which has a mammoth student body of 60,000, but they still don't have too much room for niggers. I think there may have been, including myself, I think there may have been, we'll say 5. I might be given 1 or 2 extra dots of color, but I'm all right with that. I don't think it was much more than 5. Like, I don't think it was no 10 black people present in the theater, not by a long stretch. I'm going to say 5 black people, amidst probably 80 people present for the viewing, give or take 15, we'll say. And they were robust of a lot of these. Some of the folks were in the film, and friends and family and just other suspected racists who wanted to come out and yell and support and all that good stuff. Whoopee. And so I said, I got to ask a question. And I am so thankful. Reading is more important than watching television, reading nonfiction. I'm so thankful that we had Dr. Wayne A. Wiegand as a guest on the program. His book, In Silence or Indifference, where he talks about the long, well-documented history of white women practicing white supremacy at the libraries and libraries themselves, being institutions of white supremacy, and making sure that we restrict the types of literature that black people have access to. We don't want you reading no code book in Neely Fuller now. Maybe we don't want you doing no reading at all. But that's what we talked about with Dr. Wiegand at the beginning of last year. One of the better books that I read for the year, even though I think it was actually published in 2024, like right at the beginning. Anyway, so I shoot my hand up, and I'm sitting up front, as I always do, shoot my hand up. I said, man, you did this. And again, I can't emphasize enough. If I had doubled in with one more question, I would have included Christ Church. Just the fact you don't just go to anywhere in New Zealand, you go to Christ Church. I, Gus T., lame, worthless Negro, suspected crackhead, I have interviewed non-white people who were born in New Zealand, and one of the first things we spoke about was, man, that Christchurch terrorist attack. And they, even though, in fact, you can hear it in the archives, even though their film was not about the Christchurch violence, white terrorist attack, I think that's 2019, they immediately spoke to it. They didn't mention it. They talked about the earthquake, which is important, but I mean, dang. And because that white terrorist attack had so much resonance throughout the world, that attack impacted, can I say his name accurately one more again? Peyton Gendron, and his 2022 attack in Buffalo, where he slaughtered 10 black people at the Tops. The Christchurch attack influenced he and many others. He wasn't the only one. I mean, oh my goodness, like, woo! Massive event in the system of white supremacy racism. Recent history, but she didn't mention that at all. So that was one that if I wish, and maybe I should have been more aggressive to get in an extra question. But I said, man, you did this whole project, or it would have been 3 questions because I did follow up. So I would have, had to get in about 3 or 4 questions. And as you heard with Dorothy Roberts, oh boy, sometimes look, Negra, you should be glad we let you in. You ask another, we'll castrate you. You heard that report we talked about this past Wednesday. Ask another question if you want. And even the black people get rowdy. Ask another question if you want to. Ask another question if you want to. Anyway. But I did ask, you did this whole project and you all went all the way to New Zealand and talking about libraries and repression, and you didn't bring up nothing about the role of libraries as institutions of white supremacy, and then specifically white women who dominated the film made by a white woman, Sophia Ferguson. You ain't mentioned nothing about white women's role in all of this as well? And I believe I did it. That's why I said I kicked myself afterwards for not recording, but I mean, it was a documentary, so yeah. Anyway, but I believe I heard someone give one of those type thing. Like, here we go, Leroy. We let you in. We could have get on out of here. You suspect crackhead Negro, that they could have did that. We let you in. Here we go. That's what it sounded like to me, but, my mind could have been playing tricks on me. Maybe that wasn't the case. So Miss Ferguson responds, and she says, that is true. Honestly, I didn't feel comfortable addressing that. I didn't think I was the right person to address all that. I feel like someone else, that should be their role. That should be their story to tell. I did not think it was my place to tell. Now, this one I can say, Gus T did get aggressive and follow on up. Said, are you a white woman, man? Well, say I got a little bit Lebanese, and then sometimes, when I go, sometimes when they look at me and I get my tan in the summertime, I said, oh my Lord. That's why I said I kind of kicked myself afterwards, like, for real, Gus, you were too lazy to hit the ring woman. Like, again, it was a documentary, and my thought process was, we're going to now be having a discussion about a film that you have not heard and not seen. Now, I guess I could have told you about all of this for context, I reckon, and then you could have heard the discussion next time. That's what I'll do next time, but that was why I was hesitant, because this was a lot of visual, too. That notwithstanding. So this is, are you a white woman? And so we get all the Lebanese and are you able to function as a white woman? I was going to ask real quick, wait a minute, y'all went to New Zealand. What's on your passport? But are you able to function as a white woman? Yes. Respectfully, it is your place to tell the history of white supremacy and libraries, because a lot of it is people like you, white women, keeping black people out of libraries, keeping books out of our hands, calling the police, you name it, anything. And when we talk about lack of literacy and black people don't read and all the rest of it, and Chris Rock berate us for being lazy and not reading, well, white women have played a hefty role in that process all over the world. But that was on Wednesday. Right, and that was a part of why we had to scooch the Neutralizing Workplace Racism program a little bit earlier, Gus T, on his counter-racist grind, or at least attempting to be. That notwithstanding, one thing that I will say, I'm repeating Mr. Fuller again sometimes, that is great. Repeating Mr. Fuller again, except for that one phrase, not all white people are racist. That one does not need to be repeated. But that one phrase Mr. Fuller has, he has lots of things that can be repeated, should be repeated. That one is not one. Where Fuller has in the 10 stops, no cursing. Now, I will concede I'm not perfect at this, or perfect at anything, obviously, worthless Negro from Virginia. But even when Gus T has had many instances of discourtesy and interrupting and incorrect behavior on the part of non-white people, I do not curse out non-white people. You can even take current illustrations of this. Non-white people have interrupted me on the program and made incorrect allegations against Gus T. I have not cursed out all that to non-white people, even on days when I'm stressed, and there are many of those. Fuller does say no cursing, and I think that is one thing that we can do. I think that the dozens and hostility and contempt for black people, that is a part of the culture that white people have conditioned for black people. It is unfortunate, but that's part of why Mr. Fuller said no parties. There's a whole bunch of things that Mr. Fuller said that we can repeat with pride. No parties. Minimize contact. Minimize conflict. No cursing black people. And I mean, that's when I've seen this for years, where we, victims of racism, will see that, but then it'll be, well, I was stressed. I was upset. I didn't feel well. You are a no-count stupid Negro. Whatever the justification, where it is straight for me to go ahead and curse you, because you are a no-good dumbass Negro. Like, is it no cursing or is it no cursing? And I mean, all that caveat nonsense and justifying why we just want to get back into our familiar pattern of displaying our contempt and anti-blackness for other black people, other victims of racism. Nobody else is stressed. No other, you're the only victim of white supremacy who is stressed today is you. Even the dumb Negro that you're cursing, they are not stressed today, just you. Code is code is code. Even I thought about that for the military. That's one thing. Mr. Fuller, 2 tours in the Korean War. Mr. Fuller, that was something that stood out to me when I first started. Mr. Fuller did not, even for people that he seemed to have a lot of familiarity with, Dr. Welsing, he would call her Dr. Welsing every time. I don't think I ever heard Mr. Fuller call her Francis. And I mean, they were contemporaries, around the same age, so it would have been appropriate. I don't think anybody would have said, "Oh my God, you heathen, Mr. Fuller, what are you calling her Francis for?" And I don't think she would have taken it that way either. I mean, she had such regard for Mr. Fuller, unless I'm misinformed, but I never heard him call her anything other than Dr. Welsing. Dr. Welsing. I never heard him call her on a first, and that was like, that's what I'm saying. Even people that he had familiarity with, male or female, Mr. such and such, Mr. Harris, Dr. Welsing, always. And I said, "Oh, that's right, you Korean War, that got it, okay. Veterans a lot of time will have that," but I really appreciate that about his brand of counter-racism code and just being that level of military professionalism in how you address people, because in the military, certainly you are under stressful conditions. You might be dropping bombs on people, Hiroshima, who knows, Agent Orange, really stressful conditions. Even then, sir, Colonel, boom, 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 you have a code about how you speak. I just think it's very important. Victims of white supremacy, we're all, I mean, hey, it might be that we're all stressed every day. So if that's the case, now we don't have codification anymore because we're all stressed. We can all find some way of justifying cursing out black people. Hey, if the black person really gets on your nerves, they done stole your car, ripped you off all your money, lost the rent money in the dice game, whatever, maybe all of the above. Hey, we don't need to have any contact. And I respect that. Somebody say, "Hey man, look here, Gus T, I have been around some lame Negroes, but you are the lamest of the lame. And I feel like if I spend even 30 more seconds with you, I'm going to have to curse you like never before. So it's best that we minimize contact." I would respect that and turn my head between turn my tail between my legs and depart abruptly. Say, "Man, I'm going to have to get my act together. I'm going to have to get my act together. Man, cursed out everywhere I go. I'm going to have to get my act together." I would respect that. Not just keep hanging around so I can be cursed out and cursed out and cursed out. I do not think that helps us replace white supremacy with justice at all. Cursing, we don't curse white people. I do not think cursing victims of white supremacy, I don't think that's leading us towards universal man, universal woman either. I'm a massive, that's why I say that all the time. I am estranged from C.O.W.S listeners. I do not kick it with you guys. I say that all the time. That way we don't have this cursing and calling. None of that. I'm focused on my assignment. But that would be one thing. And I would even just say, like, man, I have so little contact with black people. To be in contact with a black person who curses me, Gus, personally, it was so shocking. Like, just, wow. And then to have it happen repeatedly, like, oh yeah, this would damage my black self-respect. Even, like I said, if it's the worst of the worst, even if, and I was not stealing the car or anything of that nature. But man, like even for one context, it to be, man, one trade-off, unfortunately, for living in the Pacific Northwest, you do get very, very long hours of daylight this time of year, like late May, late May, pretty much like Mother's Day forward to late July. Whew. Massive hours of daylight. Now, I'm not complaining. On the record, hand on the Bible, as they say to white Jesus, June 6, 2026. Gus T is not complaining. This is just a statement of fact. A part of those long hours of daylight, the sun rises very early. I think the sunrise today was a little after 5 a.m., I think, like 5:10, something like that. And it's overcast and cloudy today, but still, sunrise about 5:10. The sky begins to get bright very close to 4 a.m. In these parts this time of year, like way early. Whew. It can disrupt, or it does disrupt my sleep. Like, wow, when being in a room, if you don't have like blackout curtains or something like that, especially if you're in an east-facing window, sun rises in the east, and I have had that experience many times throughout my experience in the Pacific Northwest. Wow, this time of year, you will not sleep past 5 a.m. unless you have a really good plan for how to blot out the sun, especially if you have an east-facing window. Wow. And if you have tips on that, please share untiljustice@gmail.com. But man, I just commented about that, like, man, I'm having a tough time sleeping. The sun is lighting up the sky in the room at 4 a.m. Like, man, it makes it a little tough to sleep. Winks are important. For that to warrant, get your ass up from a victim of white supremacy? Like, why? Why? I mean, even if your perception is that Gus T does nothing but sleep all day, barely roll out of bed in time to do the program, and then go back to sleep, even if that's the context, me saying the sun is waking me up at 4 a.m. and I'm having a tough time sleeping, why would that be a reasonable response to a victim of racism? Get your ass up. Minimize contact. Incidentally, though, I'm just following the logic out on that one. Okay, that might be dangerous policy here in Seattle. Like, I get it if it's like you're supposed to be a warrior and be on your assignment. Maybe you get up at 5 a.m. Like I've heard some warriors do that. You're supposed to get up at 5 a.m. You get up with the sun. Well, I did say I'm not complaining about the brightness early in the morning, and I'm not, because hey, it is not like that all the time. It's like that in the summertime. Oh, well, you got to get the other side of this in the wintertime. So if I'm rising with the sun type of a thing, does that mean I get to sleep all day long in the wintertime? Hey, you might get to sleep all day legit, because, hey, here in December, you get a good overcast day, of which there are plenty. Street lights are still on at 11 a.m. Street lights pop back on 2 in the afternoon sometimes. Does that mean you get to stay in bed all day? Just saying, according to Gus T, I don't think the sun is the barometer for rising, sleeping in the Pacific Northwest. I don't keep conventional sleep hours anyway as a victim of white supremacy, but man, just it is, as a victim of racism, I will just say it is very tense, particularly when it seems that sort of response, I say the sun, not I was out all night at the strip club, not I was up all night shooting heroin, trying to find a vein. I was trying to sleep, and the sun is waking me at 4 a.m. and disrupting my sleep. And that is, get your ass up, with a thought process being, you sleep all day long. That's all you do anyway. Get up. Anyone who thinks that way about me, I would not want to talk to you anyway about anything. And many people think that way about Gus T. Many C.O.W.S investors, many C.O.W.S listeners, that is their perception. People who have met me personally, or people who just listen to the program, you sleep all day long and roll out of bed to do the program. That right there, we are estranged. Minimize contact. It's many things I could point to. Woo! New nickname for Gus T, Triple V. I have to explain that. Or we have victim. That's different. Gus T, a.k.a. Triple V. I have to explain that down the road. But man, there are many things that I could point at, but no one else, in terms of a civilian at this point, has Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's FBI files. You think I acquired those by sleeping all day? We are estranged. I've been saying for some time, middle finger up as I brought, even then, no profanities, right? Middle finger up. I am estranged. That right there, I said when I shared those FBI files, I said, for reals, we're not cool. It could have been, hey, old sleep and eat, I guess sleep and eat and snort crack occasionally, Gus T, could have said, hey, since I'm a no-count coon, you all are way smarter than I. You all don't sleep and eat all day long. You already have these files, yes? Anyway, minimize contact, especially with black people. I guess if you have that low of an opinion of them that you think they just sleep and eat all day long, if they say they're having difficulty sleeping and your assessment is you're just a lazy no-count nigger who sleeps all day anyway, no contact. Any hoodles. Let's see. The segments that we heard, shout to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who I just mentioned. Even have to bring that up, like, man, the contempt that we have for black people is so conditioned in us. Many of us talk to Dr. Welsing the same way you all think of Gus T. Renegade. I was going to say for a moment, it's maybe not quite as extreme, but yes, it is. They just didn't say that Dr. Welsing slept all day long. She did have that medical degree, but she herself said, tons of black people said, you are crazy. You are a kook. I've had black people look me in my face and say, now, you know, Dr. Welsing is out here talking about some aliens and spaceships. You know she don't know what she's talking about. Aliens. E.T., brothers and sisters. E.T. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's not really that far from Gus T. You old crackhead, sleep and eat all that. That's not really that far to... And you all, C.O.W.S listeners, when Dr. Welsing came here in 2013 and said, hey, man, this recreational cannabis, as a medical doctor and a black person who was born in Chicago, who's been spied on by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI since I was 19 at least, this recreational ganja, this ain't it, man. Protect your brain computer. C.O.W.S listeners said, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know nothing about no black people, Dr. Wells. Shut up, Dr. Wells. You don't know what you're talking about. The contempt that we have for black people is so ingrained. It is staggering. That's minimize kind of. Even that's Fuller said, no parties, no hanging out. I do not hang out. I minimize contact with black people. And particularly this year, more than any other, and it's not like we haven't been broadcasting. I mean, you can take your pick if you think it's constructive or no, whatever. I will say, it ain't no coincidence at all. At all. The spirit of Dr. Welsing has been with us this year. Woo! We walked into those Welsing files. Providence. Right on time. Yes, it could have only been better if we had got this on her birthday back in March. Birth date, so-called. But the book club selections, which I had been picking, we read a dissertation for the first time ever. Why? Dr. Colin Anthony Beckles talks about Dr. Welsing over and over and over. And what was that dissertation about? White people making sure that black people don't read and don't have access to bookstores, which was something Dr. Welsing talked about all the time. Black people reading and reading serious books about racism. And that's how she popped up in that dissertation over and over. And COINTELPRO, FBI programs to sabotage these bookstores, and people like Dr. Welsing promoting black people reading seriously, studying racism. That was the context of walking to being in possession of Dr. Welsing's FBI files, at least what they've released thus far. Probably lots more still digging. All of that said, we heard Dr. Welsing at the beginning, spirit with us strongly, and she was talking about the sun tanning, which that's a part of why she said she was terminated from Howard University, where she had been terminated in 1975. She had been under FBI surveillance for 25 years by the time she's terminated from Howard. I know we got fact checkers out there. Middle finger up. Yes, I said 1951 if you want to be accurate on it. She was terminated in 1975. That's 24 years. Can I round up without being fact checked? You going to beat me over the head, you crackhead Gus. You don't know what you're talking about. You can't even add. Yes, a quarter century. 25 years. I'm very aware. 1975 to 1951 is 24. Thank you. We heard Dr. Welsing talking about the suntans, which she said she was terminated from Howard for talking about this, and said, how can you say this? And I got data. Oh, I wish we still had her with us, because that was Canadian broadcasting. These are not people classified as white here in the States. Up yonder, and they're saying the exact same thing. I want to get more bronze. I just want a little bit that brownish tan, get a little bit more confidence when I go olive. I hadn't even heard that one before. Go olive, even though I have heard people say got that olive complexion. They talk about somebody who's with the meds, so-called Southern Europe, and they're talking about places like Italy. The people, black people called the Moors, invaded there and left the touch of the dark tar brush, as they say. But that's where I'll hear that, the olive complaint. That's in Mr. Fuller's favorite, The Godfather, which is what I just said, the Italians, who they sometimes say are black, sometimes not before. See, I think they'd be accepted as white now, but they say, oh, you got your little darks. There's some of that's in The Godfather too. Y'all, you slimy Italian. But man, it's said when I'm all pale, I just look depressed. I've heard that bunches and bunches of it. Ghastly pale, ghastly white, look like you about to die. I've heard that over and over, that life is color. Vigor is color. Not what they have told us being that F word, pale, melanin deficient. Oh no, you got Ebola or something wrong with you? What's going on? Oh, but I thought, and the younger folks, even you heard so many of them, they said exactly what Dr. Welsing said. We got all these campaigns and such. More skin cancer is more prevalent than all the other cancers combined. I even double checked that when he said it and said, yep, that's true, apparently. Wow, in that environment, we're going to still have the tanning beds and such. I will say when I heard that report, I was intrigued by Australia, which we heard about them in the segment too. Man, what did they do in Australia to get white people to say, whoa, 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 we can't do all that suntan. Get them suntanning beds on out of here. We can't do all that bronzing. What? That is crazy. Like, that is worthy of investigation. Never heard that sort of thing before. I'm very accustomed to hearing what they heard from those young folks in Canada. I'll deal with that later. Gotta look good now. Shut up, Mom. I'm gonna do what I want. I'm a grown white person. I'm gonna look good. I want to be confident. I gotta get out here and get me some color. I don't want to look all sickly. Shut up, Mom. I'm grown. I do what I want. I do what I want. My sister, she grown. I do what I want. Shut up, shut up. The warnings, that's nice. I deal with that later. My grandmother, she told me I go out with an umbrella and everything, and, I got the skin cancer. You don't want to do shit. I'll worry about that later on. I'm a young person. I want to be sexy and get me some color. Woo. I thought that's exactly what Dr. Welsing told us, why we got all this white supremacy racism. Oh my goodness, wait a minute, that was Dr. Ivan Litvinov, I think it's a white man. He said that the sun, you can go out, have fun, enjoy, you just need to do it in a safe way. Not saying that we would be safer in a cave from the sun and predators. I said, whoa. Michael Bradley, Iceman Inheritance, that's the book. He was a guest on the Cows all the way back May of 2009. That is the basic premise of his book. In fact, it lines up beautifully with the ISIS papers in saying that because of white people's melanin deficient status and difficulty in dealing with the sun, it drove them into the caves with Romulus, Remus, the wolves, man's best friend, and very much aligns. I think he calls black people, non-white people, the sun people, and why their hostility to non-white people. And we talked about all of that and how it very much in sync with what Dr. Welsing, her theory of white genetic annihilation. But that's in the archives 2009. The segment where they talked about Australia wanting to put their rubbish on Fiji. I'd never heard that term, waste colonialism. If this is so constructive in terms of we're going to get rid of the waste and it's going to be for constructive purposes, why don't you just keep it in Australia? Wouldn't that be safe? You don't have to trudge it across all this water. Isn't that the Pacific? You don't have to do all of that. I'd probably drop half of it across the way and pollute the waterways and all that. You could keep it right there and have all that great energy that you all could use. Don't they have the Australian Open coming up 2027 in January? You could be using that right there. No? You're just trying to look out for your island brothers, the Fijians. That's what you're trying to do? Come on. We got waste colonialism, environmental racism. It's just more components of the system of white supremacy. I mean, they could have kept environmental racism. I'm totally with that. But, I mean, we do not need to come up with a new term every year. And system of white supremacy racism, global. And you do the same thing here in the States. Wherever the black people are, that's where we go and dump all the trash, asbestos, any pollutants that you can think of. We dump it on the black people. And they do the same thing worldwide. I heard that Shell in Nigeria, I was reminded, really all of it, Dr. Kamal Kamban, his term cesspoolians, where white people go out and pollute the entire planet. And especially where black people live. Go into Nigeria, that is a very important geographic location, the area of the world known as Nigeria. They have a massive population of black people, according to UNESCO estimates, and these were estimates from 2014, and about the same time that they were having a previous Ebola epidemic. But the UNESCO reports were that the population on the continent of Africa in total was going to multiply just how many ever times over, and then specifically with the region Nigeria, just Nigeria is projected to have a population of 1 billion black people by 2100. 1 billion. And we'd be, now what would that be, 74 years from that? And when they were given that diagnostic or outlook in 2014, it was not, whoopee, yeah, that's gonna be, it was not that, it was trepidation. Oh God, what? 1 billion? Just Nigeria? That's the way it sounded. So with that on my brain computer, all of this was Shell and them dumping all of this oil, and they knew that they were polluting it. Cesspoolians know that we're polluting the waterways and the air and how that's going to impact the people's health. This might have been totally deliberate, because they said some of the internal memos, they knew, ooh, our machinery, this is not up to code. We are violating our own standards about the correct way of extracting this oil. Even that's one of those where people will say, well, it's not really racism. That's not really what this is all about. Contraire. They'll say, it's about, oil. White people already have control of all of that. This is about the system of white supremacy racism. I would even humbly submit that for Shell, poisoning all of these black people, and who knows how much oil has been leaked, what sensitive waterways, and how this will impact wildlife farm. They said it drove some people out of business. Like, man, how long this has been going on, who knows the long-term ramifications, birth defects, all of that. I humbly submit that may have been the primary objective to begin with. Yeah, the oil and all that stuff, that's second. We're going to poison these niggers. We're going to Michael Swango these niggers on a mass scale in a region. What, 1 billion niggers? We need to get to work right now, and that's what we're going to do. Shell, we got your back. Shell, we got your back. We're going to knock that down right now. Make sure that we're going to cut at least a good 10 million off that right now. I could be in error, but that's my thing. I think that's the way the racist mind would work. Let's see. The report. When the Shell defenders, white people, I suspect, British or otherwise, they said that these reports that the BBC obtained, that they are missing critical context, that you're leaving out. We got all these scamming Nigerians. I said, such a big laugh on that part. I thought of non-Clemson grad was telling us about going over to Nigeria and having attempted family members and all that. They go, oh, they got the scamming Nigerians again. They got to blame that ready-made excuse. We blame the black people, and then we get real specific. We're going to blame the scamming Nigerian black people. They're at the root of all evils in the world. Let's see. The facility in Missouri where they warehouse the black people, where they said all of the abuse and well, I guess there were two different reports. We had one where they were talking about the black children in foster care programs in Missouri, that they're going to be losing their SNAP benefits. I was reminded of Devontae immediately. Harris County, Black Delectable Negro, #1 book for a reason, but constantly keeping black people in a state where we don't have proper food, and in an environment where there is all kinds of food, where there is no reason for us to be starving and all the rest of it, to have black people constantly, man, I sure am hungry, man, I sure am starving, all of that just, a deliberate aspect of how white people run the plantation, keeping black people starving. It's going to be a lot more difficult to rebel and revolt if you don't have no food. Let's see. The one component about and of course that's going to impact a lot of black children because that's who ends up disproportionately dumped in foster care. Black babies cost less. The other component, the foster care program in Missouri where the children are being abused. And that's another one where you already know it's got to be a disproportionate number of black children for the same reasons. You got all these black children that end up in foster care. I went to dig because I said, man, like I'd never heard of this. The facility where they send these children, where the parents, they said, can voluntarily send these children. I said, man, I've never heard of this. I suspect that there are probably some black people who are being terrorized and subject. The C.O.W.S. Institute, that's it, C-A-L-O Institute in Missouri. So I said, I'm at Change Academy at Lake of the Ozarks for the acronym, the C.O.W.S program. But I said, man, it would have to be a lot of non-white people. So I ask, what are the demographics of this facility? It is private, but it's some of what I was able to dig out. The cost barrier, the C.O.W.S facility costs as much as $20,000 per month because families from across the country send children there, often funded out of pocket via private adoption insurance or other through specific out-of-state public school district allocations. The general population historically skews heavily towards families with financial means. Okay. Adoption demographics. C.O.W.S publicizes that 90% of its clientele are adopted youth. Because the United States adoption system, Devontae, includes a high volume of transracial adoption. Now, again, that is so deceptive. What that means, that word alone, what that means is, Devontae, white people stealing black children. That's what that means. Abducting black children. That's what that means. It does not mean no Al Sharpton. Oh, we got a big house and I'm an empty nester and we got room and we found some poor white children in Appalachia in West Virginia. Hey, come on, that's not transracial adoption at all. And even authors have written whole books talking about the so-called adoption and child welfare system. The laws are explicitly written, deliberately written to make it easy for white people to acquire black children. That a part of the fabric of C.O.W.S. Continuing. Documented racial incidents. While exact racial breakdown statistics are omitted from public licensing files, recent media investigations highlight that black youth are present and have faced targeted racial harm inside the facility. And it gives specific details. This is from an AP report, a 2020 case. A 9-year-old boy adopted from Haiti. Illinois education funds paid for his stay there. He later told his mother he was bullied. Other kids used racial slurs against him and defecated and urinated on his bed. This is in an AP Associated Press report. His mother said when she took him out, he woke up screaming for weeks. She said before finally telling her that he'd been sexually assaulted there by an older boy. They have other incidences. In fact, 2021 case that's cited in St. Louis Public Radio, a mother from Chicago filed a formal report stating that her black son was subjected to systemic racial bullying and inappropriate physical touching by peers due to a complete lack of staff supervision on the grounds. That's about what I thought was happening at the Cato. When you play around with sex, the joke is on the offspring. Matter of fact, that's the report where you get snatched off to the CALO, C-A-L-O facility. That's the report where the children said, oh, you got gooned. Remember the goon squad in Mississippi? Really, that's throughout. That's white culture. The goon. And they said it just like the goon squad in Mississippi, where they come to put the chocolate sauce and the dildo on you. They say, hey, you want to do it the easy way or the hard way? Talking to a child. I just told some of these reports. 9-year-old. That's goon, and I guess it is. I can't even think of a better word. Yep, you got gooned. I'm 12-year-old, and hey. You want to do it the hard way? Easy way. Make a choice. What? Man, when you play around with sex. Anyway, they had the report in Fenwick, Delaware, where non-humans, trust, corporation, they are allocated a vote in elections. I thought about that in the context of election fraud, 2020, January 6th, like many contexts. But when I'm hearing all that about, who gets allowed to vote and the reasoning, I said, what are the racial demographics of Fenwick, Delaware? That would be important. At least to me, I thought that was really important. Fenwick, Delaware, 98% white. 0% black. 0. I don't see 0 very often at all. Like, I look up racially restricted regions all the time because it ends up being so relevant. Michelle Alexander in Ashland, Oregon, it's not 0% there. It was 0.5. So I guess you got 0.5, but it's very rare where I see a location where it's 0% Negras. Fenwick, Delaware. Like, make sure we ain't gonna hang out here. Like, might be interesting how they let the non-human entities vote, but I'm not gonna stay here long enough to find out. Let's see. The report, the white author Michael Hayden, with all the crying and whimpering, he wrote the book Strange People on the Hill, West Virginia, where he said it's so polarizing, the times, and people have all these extreme views. He didn't say racism. Have all these different views and polarizing opinions and tearing people down, and I just couldn't talk to my friend anymore. And all the weeping, and said his friend said it was a terrible time not having contact with him and all the rest of it. We can't even name the system of white supremacy that we're talking about. That's one. Two, how is now any different from what it's been any other time? I thought white people, they brag when they get to tooting about John Brown, don't they? And you had white brother killing white brother over Leroy on the plantation. Don't they brag and tell us about that all the time? So how are things from 1865, Civil War days, how are they that much different from 2026? Much less to have a whimpering white man talking about I miss my white West Virginia pal. Because and he didn't say racist, I'm just suspected of racist views. And even Mr. Hayden, for all this with his book, he would still be a racist suspect. So, I mean, come on, be truthful. System of white supremacy, racism, and really, if there were more white people, I'm not even saying Mr. Hayden did the correct thing, but at least if you had white people say, hey, I'm not going to be cool with no racists. I'm going to out you and disassociate. I might be one of them weak, no-count white people. I might not be a Bill Gates white person, but, hey, poo on Gus T talking about not all white people is racist and all that. Well, poo. Hey, I don't hang out with no racists. I'm white, and I just stay by myself. I send my little investment into the cows, and support other counter-racist efforts, but I don't even hang out with no racist crackers. Who is that? I couldn't even get name one on the list. Let's see. They had the segment on the age of gun, or the golden age of gun rights under Trump. I said a welsing moment for sure. And it reminded me in that segment, they said one of the things is to maybe see if we can get rid of doing the background checks for private gun sales. I was like, wow, that's how we ended up with Columbine. The private gun sale. Like, wait a minute. Like, what? Why would that be? We want to go back on like the end stage white supremacy. And again, this is all gun rights and golden age for white people to have more firearms, silencers, you name it. White people. Columbine, they did shoot Isaiah Shoals, didn't they? Black male. Racists, Reb, short for Rebel, which is the high school nickname, Columbine. The Rebel. Got to have my fire. Ain't nothing more rebellious than my AR-15. My silencer, my ghost gun. Ain't nothing more rebellious. My cold, dead hand. Let's see. That case with Rick Chow, I guess that would be another one, even though that is a non-black male. And he shot and killed Cyrus Carmack Belton, 14-year-old privileged black male, and exonerated. I did think it was significant in that case. The jury, there were 5 black jurors in that case where Mr. Chow was exonerated for shooting this 14-year-old black child. I did see there were some reports of people said, man, the so-called Asian people, we are not cool, ain't no minority alliance. Duh. I saw some folks who compared this to Latasha Harlan's black female, who's also a teenager. I don't know if she was quite at 14 yet, but teenager in Los Angeles. This is within the context of the Rodney King beating and subsequent trial, acquittal of the racist officers, that Latasha Harlan was shot and killed by a non-white, non-black grocery store attendant. Very similar case, shot in the back. Very similar case, and I believe the only difference in that case, the non-white, non-black shooter was convicted, but got a very, very minor sentence for killing this young black girl. They say all these mitigating circumstances and all the rest of it. That's a lot of folks made a comparison to that, and rightly so. Just 130 yard, like chasing someone down, like, wow, that is, and chasing a child down, that is kind of cowardly. Hunting, that was the verbiage used by the attorney in the clip that we heard, John Mobley. That was his word. I thought excellent word. Hunted this young 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack Belton. I did see some of the black folks online talking, protesting, and these non-white, non-black store owners and all the rest of it. I will say, my memory did quickly when I saw this incident and had been following the whole trial and everything, but when I saw the verdict and everything, I did quickly remember Chauncey Meekins, black female. She was just shot and killed in a drive-through restaurant, not by a so-called Asian or non-white, non-black person, by a black female. And I said before, everybody has conflict with black people. I'm not saying he did the correct thing. Certainly not saying he should have been acquitted, but everybody kind of has this mentality about black people, particularly black males, but everybody, other black people, white people, other non-white people. The world would be better off without Leroy. The world would be better off without Cyrus Carmack Belton. The world would be better off without Chauncey Meekins. That's the world that we have. I just said that. I literally just said this a couple weeks ago. This is not anything that's unique to anyone. This is the contempt. This is that conditioned contempt that we have for black people. Then you combine that with anything that makes it seem like you done got uppity or loud or rowdy or snatched a water bottle aggressive or anything. Oh, yeah, we got to put you down. That's the system of white supremacy racism. So, like I said, I do not. Mr. Chow, I think I'm 130 yards. You chased down a 14-year-old? I think he should have been convicted for sure. But this ain't one where I would jump up and down and fuss at no so-called Asian person or what have you. This is exactly what I said. Everybody leaves the house looking for conflict with black people. That is the system of white supremacy racism. Try to minimize that as best you can. And I would say that too. I would if I had non-white offspring, like, oh man, I just mentioned Corey Stingley. It's bunches of cases where a black person, particularly black male, out at a convenience store or whatever it is, Michael Brown Jr. even, if you want to bring that one up, where just the thought that you stole something, a piece of candy, chewing gum, water bottle, cigarette, anything, you could be killed on the spot, whether you did it or not. You can be killed on the spot. Law enforcement, anyone, someone who works at the store, random white person, random non-white person, you can be killed on the spot. That is the system of white supremacy. And really, in my view, that's one of the most important lessons. Yes, Mr. Chow should have been convicted, and if this was a white person, well, in fact, if this had been a white person, he probably does not, I'm talking about Mr. Chow, he probably does not chase a white offender down. They could have done the exact same thing that young Cyrus did, 14 years old. If it's a 14-year-old white person, 14-year-old white male, 14-year-old white female, he is not going to chase them 130 yards, goalpost to goalpost on that football field, and pow, shoot them in the back. That's not going to happen. Let's see. That section where they spoke with white woman, I believe, I could be wrong, I'm going to have to double check, Laura Schmidt at UCSF about the ultra-processed foods and comparing them to tobacco. I thought that was so, and it was even because I didn't know the relationship tobacco industry and taking over the food industrial complex and all of these ultra processed foods and tater chips and Lunchables and Chips Ahoy and all the rest of it, and the chemical additives where these same group of white people, they had seen the impact of the chemical additives with cigarettes, said we could just apply the same thinking and technology to our, Debbie Hostess cakes and Lay's potato chips and Cheetos and all the rest of it. That section, and maybe that's what they do with the ganja too. It reminded me of William Duffy's book, Sugar Blues. He talks about them putting sugar in the cigarettes specifically, and that being a component that made cigarettes so powerfully addictive and difficult to get rid of. The sugar, they thought that being a strong part. And William Duffy's book, Sugar Blues, I think that was published like over 50 years ago. I think it was published in like 1975. I might be off on the exact date of it. But at any rate, when in that segment where they talked about brain health, talking about there might be a correlation between consumption of all of these ultra-processed foods and dementia, brain difficulties, especially as we age, and you've had a lifetime of consuming these poisonous, toxic products. I cannot say enough, especially if you have offspring. Like, that should be, before you get to the bedroom, this is in books and such, we talking about the mother, potential, or preparing mom, potential father, we are going to study, we're going to take some cooking classes, get some cookbooks, all of that, and we are going to get our diet. Mr. Fuller talks about eating correctly. We're going to do just that. We're not going to have a whole house full of ultra-processed foods, and we're not going to do a whole 9 months before this child gets here of munching on ultra-processed foods. We're not going to do that. That is totally ridiculous, and we're not going to model that behavior for other victims of racism, even if it's just you. No, like, let's be serious. Let's protect our brain computer. That say that all the time. Protecting our brain computer, making food a massive component. Even some of it, just small things like, we're going to not have no sodas in the house. Not even going to buy them. There's so many other beverages and things that we can drink that are tasty, healthful. Not going to load us up with all these chemicals and sugar and all the rest of it. We're not going to have no sodas in the house. It's little things you can do, Not gonna buy all the sugary cookies and all the rest. We're not gonna do that. We get rid of the one we got here. We're not gonna do that. We just make little steps at getting rid of all of that poison that white people intend for us as victims of white supremacy, especially black people. That is exactly what they want us to eat. They do not want to see no Neely Fuller Jr. being around here live until almost 100. They do not want to see no Dr. Welson hanging out and being here over 80 years old. She would have been 81 if she had hung out and made it till March of 2016. They do not want to see that. They want you, D'Angelo, Chadwick Boseman, and what they want is, and even what Chadwick Boseman, D'Angelo, what they want is, by the time you get to 35, 40, if not before, struggling. Oh my, them Twinkies done put it on me. Oh my goodness. Oh, I got all the gastrointestinal cancers, and oh man, and I can't even think straight. I can't even be on my assignment correctly. That's why I said, like, imagine if, Dr. Welsing had been real reckless, and I love Kentucky Fried Chicken, which many of us do, the Colonel. But she had just been, I love me some Kentucky Fried Chicken. I just got to have me Kentucky Fried Chicken every day. What if she, had been like that, been real reckless with her diet, and we missed out on her? Maybe she leaves us at 60, and maybe she's in poor health, as opposed to being able to travel and keep up the meticulous schedule that she did, and come hang out, talk with a goofball like myself 31 times. Can't do all that. Got to be on the dialysis machine. It takes up a lot of time and energy. Really being seen. Same thing for Neely Fuller Jr. Lived to be almost 100. All the traveling that he did to speak and radio programs and such, and even editing the code book when he was in his 80s, I believe. Unless I'm, off with my math, forget, but I think, he was in his 80s. He was editing the code books. I mean, man, in pretty quality frame, in better frame of mind than Gus T and many of the black people that I know who are 50 years younger than he. So, man, being serious as much as we can. Gus T, we can all make improvements there, but really being serious, eating correctly. Like I said, if that means take some cooking classes. Really invest more time and energy in what foods I have in the house, what foods we buy, what foods I eat, exploring newer foods, better foods, healthier foods. But hey, racists, they intend for us to eat bad food and plenty of it, especially if you're classified as black. Oh, yeah, we don't want no asparagus for you. We don't want no Brussels sprouts for you. Where the Cheetos at? That red dye number 4, that's what we want to pile up on your plate. Let's see. The section where they talked about Pepe, hope I can say his name correctly, Pepe Sikisi Bele Jr. in Milwaukee. Privileged black male was at his 4-year-old son's birthday party, and he gets killed. Now, that segment played following the report about the golden age of gun rights. And then you heard all the sad black people there talking about, we got all these guns, and we about to have some more. And maybe with silencer and all of that. I told you Milwaukee is dangerous. And Fuller said no parties. Apparently even birthday party for 4-year-olds? No parties. Fuller said, why we can't have nobody? We don't know how to have a party. What you do at the 4-year-old birthday party? I said, I don't know. Do you get the cake at the 4-year-old birthday party? I said, no, you don't do that. Do you blow out the candles at the 4-year-old? No. Would you give out the gifts at the, no. You bring your pistol. That's what you do at the 4-year-old birthday party. Worthy of great pity. And the summer hasn't even started yet. Like, it hadn't even got warm yet for us to really get rolling for the summertime. Shoot up every barbecue, family reunion, Father's Day, you name it. Like, no parties. What a disgrace. What a disgrace. The section, last report that we heard about the trial in Texas, Karmelo Anthony, where I said there will not be any black jurors. I just want to read from social media, because as soon as I saw that there were not going to be any black jurors in this case, I posted, because I had mentioned it before and I knew a lot of people were paying attention, and it reminded me of the exact same logic that Mr. Fuller has shared with us repeatedly in these sort of instances. Even if a white person, race soldier, is aggressive against you, name calls you, whatever, you want to try to escape, because, man, if something happens and you end up killing a white person, even if it is direct self-defense, that might not be fun down in Frisco or anywhere else. So I posted about this. This is on June 4, 2 days ago, and I shared a report where they were detailing the jury composition, and I said, direct quote, 0 black jurors on the Karmelo Anthony murder trial. Given the demographics of Frisco, where this incident took place, I suspected there would be an all-white jury, #jury of his peers. Now, some random suspected racist, just same thing I was saying with the libraries, white woman felt the need to interject herself into my timeline. She says, apparently you haven't been following this case closely. There were 3 that made it to the final round, but when they said they couldn't give a brother, now she has it in quotes, brother 20 years, or that he was just a kid, in quotes, showing very obvious bias, it disqualified them and they were pulled. It's their fault. Now, I just played you the news report where they were talking about what happened in this trial. They said that these jurors were struck, the last 3. They didn't say because they loved their black brother. They didn't say because they wanted to look out for this kid. They said that they were struck because they were all educators. That is wildly different from, we just want to look out for our black brother. The primary method that white people use to practice practice racism is deception, lying. And the lies start, this person at Mighty _Marsha, suspected racist. Why are you even on my timeline with your, and even beyond? Why? There are no black jurors. At the end of the day, same thing like Peyton Gendron, Gus T was accurate. There are no black jurors. So you're coming to correct me. See the pattern? You're coming to correct a black person who was accurate, and you are lying on top of it. The white woman talking about Mighty Marsha. You're not even giving accurate information as to why there are no black jurors on the trial. But again, I could just come back, hey, I knew there were not going to be any black jurors on this trial. System of white supremacy, we could have stopped there. Even if I didn't know the exact demographics of Frisco, Texas, man, white people, aren't we reading New Jim Crow? White people are professional at extracting black jurors from, or we ain't got to get that far. We got all kinds of ways. Milwaukee, I was covering a jury trial this time last year. They had 2 black jurors on a trial or on a jury of 12, and 3 non-white people total, but 2 black in a city, Milwaukee, where the largest racial demographic is black people. It's way more black people in Milwaukee than white people. You had 9 white people on the Sade Robinson murder trial jury. 9. It's almost, we should have been thankful that there were 2 black faces in the jury. Please, but that's another reason, at least responding to Marcia, and I did make sure to block her, but in terms of being informed about what's happening, because white people do this sort of thing all the time. They lie. That's the default. They lie and lie and lie and just assume black people are stupid. A lot of times I think they assume because of white terrorism, we will be so afraid to challenge them and say, no, I think you are practicing racism. You are lying. You are in error. And even, why are you talking to me? Why did you feel the need to hop on my timeline to lie? And even, we all are in agreement. No black jurors on the trial. Lifetime demonstration, what it means to be white, and the white woman, Mighty Marsha, the white woman. You got to say, that's who I would expect to be on the jury. For real, like if I was talking to, this is who's going to be on the jury. And you're going to have to go and explain to them, this was self-defense. You all can't lock me up for the rest of my life. I was fearful. I thought they were going to kill me at this track meet. Brother. It's called a brother. And she put in, see there, to give it that air of legitimacy, she put it in quotes. Couldn't give a brother, even dare I say, is this 2 days in a row where we got people mocking so-called black speech? I just talked about this yesterday in Lion Michelle Alexander, who does have one white parent. I just talked about this yesterday and saying, man, this seems like it is mocking stereotypical and what is racist so-called black speech patterns. Saying, what it in, can't speak proper English, can't conjugate a verb correctly, and if I knew that these was going to do this type of a thing, that's the way black people, that's what you think of us. Apparently, that's what Mighty Marsha, that's what you think of us. That's what they thought of us anyway. Even if Karmelo Anthony, he could have been a Rhodes Scholar, 4.0 GPA, and about to go to the University of Texas, Austin on a full scholarship. He would have had the exact same thinking about Karmelo Anthony, both spellings, the basketball player and this young child, and myself. No count, brothers. That's what they think of us. And even, I deliberately, you heard me just now, I said child. Karmelo Anthony, she made sure to put it in quotes, kid. That's a goat. Always say child. Always say child. I think the only time I say kid, it might be, I'm talking about Reb and Dill out in Colorado. That might be about the only time that I say kid, but I say child. She made it brothers and kids. That's what she's talking about. Non-humans. Any hoodles. We should be here midweek. I will update the social media page so folks can see we should be back normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I will let folks know. I'm very serious. I say, Gus T say I'm a worthless Negro with the worst people skills in the known universe, bar none. That does not mean feel free to curse Gus T. Not even close. I don't even know how that logically makes sense. It would just be minimize contact with Gus T. Sobriety would be best if white people put addictive chemicals in the cigarettes and the Cheerios and the Chips Ahoy. You think they might do that to the wacky tobacco now that it's recreational and legal too? I thought they said some of the same tobacco companies that took over the food industrial complex and all the ultra-processed foods, some of these same white people are taking over the ganja recreational business. Unless I've been misinformed. Protect your brain computer. We need high, and apparently protecting the brain computer also includes put that ultra-processed Cheeto chicken nugget Snicker bar down. Protect your brain computer. Creator, remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us, stop name-calling, stop cursing people classified as black. We don't curse and name-call white people. Whew. Man, they are most to blame. Certainly can't be name-calling and cursing people who need the most help. Victims of, hey, that's what white people do. Name, call, and curse black people. That's just what we already got. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.